Welcome to the special meeting of the Board of Trustees for April 16th, 2024. Please call the order and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. I'm going to do it in the order that we're going to be voting. We're just going to start with Riser, according to the rules of order.
And Riser's present.
Riser's present. Excellent. Hathaway.
Present.
Palmer absent. Flintoff absent. Brazeau absent. Carey. Here. No. Present. So that's 4 people and that is quorum.
Just barely.
Just barely, yeah.
Well, okay, we're traveling light this evening. Let's say the Pledge of Allegiance and then we'll move on. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one God, under God, indivisible.
I've never screwed that up in my life, and I just screwed that up big time. It's all good. I'll take my embarrassment.
Okay, the adoption of the agenda. We are somewhat limited in modifications to the agenda because we must stick with the notice for this special meeting. The purpose of the and that was purpose of the possible action and approval of the 6-year capital improvement plan for the township and possible action on a labor issue for the fire department. I would like to make one announcement that the agenda does list the approval of minutes, and that actually will be moved to our regular meeting on April 23rd. Are there any other comments about the agenda? Someone prepared to move the agenda?
I would move the agenda.
Moved by Riser, support by Noel. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The agenda is approved. Brings us to public comment. This is the time for members of the public to speak for up to 3 minutes on any matter under the purview of the Board of Trustees. And given that Trustee Brazeau is not here, Trustee Riser, will you serve as our timekeeper?
I will endeavor to do so.
Okay. Is there anyone present? Oh, yes. Please come on up and have a seat at the table.
Mr. Riser, I expect you to give me 11 minutes, the same as you did for John Boyd.
Thank you. Well, they're dog minutes. It's 3 minutes.
Good evening, Kathleen Brandt, Scio resident. On the, I want to give this board some history on the capital improvement plan. November 10th, 2020, the prior board approved a capital improvement plan for 2022 to 2028. And interestingly, they have listed on their property for a second fire station and a fire station. They've forecast it would cost $8.5 million for a second fire station. So what's interesting about that is, one, we don't save for those kinds of things, but more importantly, the people that approved that were Jack Knowles and Erwin Martin. And we know Erwin Martin started a campaign to oppose the fire millage. And we know that Jack Knowles was actively involved in that and contributing. So on the one hand, we have public servants that say they realize we need a second fire station and they put it in a capital plan. And then on the other hand, when that's presented for just about the same dollar amount, then they work to torpedo that exact plan. So where's the honor in that? And I would request that they not at all be involved in any future discussions because they're not trustworthy. They approved it. And then they spent a lot of money to put up signs to shut it down. So I recommend that you look at that plan. It's clearly in there. And I believe it was forecast to be in an earlier time frame than what our chief has suggested. So it's been known in this township that we need a second fire station. So let's not fall victim to the people that then turn around and say, Well, I don't really care if my house burns down. So thank you. Please consider that.
Thank you.
Where would a copy of the 2022 capital improvement plan be?
I have it, and let's see it, Jillian, if you want.
It's on the webpage. I have it on my laptop if you
Print it out like copy.
look. The spreadsheet.
And a resolution. Two things.
So this is the resolution?
For this year or? for-
No, no, never, it's right, 2022 to 2028. And there's something wrong in the resolution, by the way.
That it must be a printout from the earlier version of the agenda that
Christie printed it.
beg your pardon?
Christie printed the whatever for us.
So do we have an updated resolution?
Yeah, it got updated last week. So if other people have versions that have yellow on them, yeah, let me just make a copy for everybody.
That would be great.
While the rest of you do public comment here. Not on the.
Sure,
Go ahead.
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Please, come on up, Judy.
Judy Monk, 555 for Gallery Park. I had just 3 comments on the spreadsheet for tonight, totally about the. One is a governance question. I noticed in the write-up coming to us, it said that it's supposed to be done every year, and it hasn't been. So I kind of get into governance freakish things, and it's like, maybe you could address why it hasn't been done. My second one is, I noticed in the amounts, 2 million something is forecasted. I'm gonna call it forecasted or budgeted for easement and purchase of property for this year. And yet there's no verbiage to describe that. There's excellent explanation for most of the other lines in the budget, but there's nothing to describe what we're planning to spend that 2+ million on. And my third comment is, I know that budgets are about putting in dollar amounts and trying to live within that budget. But my question is, do these numbers represent the board's best estimates, or are they quotes, or are they formal estimates? So are you viewing them as plus or minus range, or not to exceed range, or what was the approach taken in getting these dollar amounts to fill in? Because of course, many of the projects are yet to be done. So I just wanted to know what your process was in getting these dollar amounts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else present who would like to speak during public comment? Now we're ready to turn to those who are participating remotely.
Great, let's start with Jonathan Greenberg, followed by Rob Pattinson.
Hey, folks, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, so first of all, well, I know we've had our differences, but under no circumstance does anyone in this community want to see fire or damage or cats with smoky fur. I'm really glad to hear that things weren't worse. And so just as a outreach of kindness, I wanted to say I'm glad to hear things, are working out for you there. On a separate note, I wanted to ask the Zoom operator oh, no, not you specifically, but in general, Zoom operators can unmute meetings at the beginning. If folks attending at home were in the room, we would be hearing the meeting or the chatter or the communications amongst others. And I'd just like to have that part unmuted for those of us here too. So those are the only 2 things that I'm bringing up, and I hope you all have a great night.
Thanks, Jonathan. Go ahead, Rob. Rob Pattinson.
Thank you, Rob Pattinson, Scio Township. If I go over 3 minutes, please don't interrupt me. This is important. Last week certainly was enlightening in more ways than one. We finally know what Ian Hubert wrote to Supervisor Hathaway at 8:58 the morning of the 16th. Thank you, Ian, for protecting our supervisor from his own boneheaded mistake. You saved him a lot of grief. If his emails had been made public, he would likely have been in a lot of trouble. We finally have a clearer picture of what happened. Section 4.2, paragraph 3 of the N1D report proves that trustee Carey did absolutely nothing wrong, and the supervisor's email was already, quote, present and active, unquote, on that computer. That aspect of the incident is understood. Now, what about the rest? One thing that was a surprise was the way the meeting was structured. Ian Hubert knows more about what happened than anybody and has the technical know-how to explain it to the board. Ian should have been at the table with the expert. Why wasn't he? Why was he threatened with calling the police if he didn't shut up? For someone who is such a gentleman, to have been pushed to the point he has to speak up during the meeting shows just how damaging this debacle has been. Then we get to his public comments. Clerk Flintoff moved to give Ian 5 minutes, a whole extra 2 minutes. Obviously, something about what Ian had to say scared the socks off our supervisor. He was so adamant that Ian be denied 2 extra minutes, he voted loudly with an extended no. Supervisor Hathaway, what is it you are so scared of from what Ian had to say? What could he explain to the board that so threatened you? I think I know. Ian could explain what he said to you the morning of the 16th, and that you then ignored and never bothered to ask questions about before you ran willy-nilly to the police screaming about a crime perpetrated against you. Which raises the question, why did you never respond to Ian with questions? Why did you never ask Trustee Carey about what happened? Please explain to this board why you never bothered to find out what happened before you made a false accusation against a colleague and, in my opinion, filed a false police report. Why would you do that? What we don't have a clear picture of is what happened during the rest of this incident. I thought there was going to be an investigation. Where are the interviews with all involved? Where is the report of what was said to the sheriff? Manager Parker, this is your responsibility. Please tell us tonight what you're doing next to investigate what happened on the 15th and 16th. From last week's mess, it is clear the supervisor can have no part in organizing future special meetings about this subject. It must be controlled solely by Manager Parker. I look forward to the rest of the investigation coming to light in another special meeting in the near future. I said that night and I say again, the supervisor should resign in shame and the supervisor should resign immediately. This was the most bumbled, incompetent, and asinine attempt at political sabotage I have ever witnessed. Thank you for the extra time.
It was only 4 seconds, Rob.
Thank you, Rob. Pat Stein. Go ahead, Pat.
Good evening. I want to also touch on the fire at Will Hathaway's house. Supervisor Hathaway, it's unfortunate that you had such a fire, and it can be so traumatic to family members and to pets. And I'm glad to hear that all is well in that area. But along that line, I want you to know I did not start the fire. I have proof positive in the way of cameras and what have you with myself and actually 4 other Scio residents. We did not start the fire. I only bring this up because I don't want a sheriff deputy knocking on my door for yet another false accusation. Thank you. I also want to touch on something Rob had said about the treatment of Ian Hubert last week. It really was shameful, Supervisor Hathaway, the way you would not allow him to speak up on an incident that is, well, the Sheriff Gate incident. I think it was really important to hear from Ian. And it was shameful that you didn't want him to speak. It's so shameful that I agree you should resign. You really should resign. You can do better, but apparently you can't. So do the world a favor and just resign. Thank you much.
Thank you, Pat. Anyone else present would like to speak? Raise your hand. It looks like, we're good to go.
Thank you. In that case, we will move on to the new business items. The first is the approval of this 6-year capital improvement plan. And Township Manager Parker, will turn to you to close this item.
Well, I believe, trustee Gary had requested a special meeting regarding the, proposed capital improvement plan. And, there may be some other questions related to the plan, and I was thinking that myself as well as, Matt Parks from OHM and members of the staff for the township could, try to respond to those questions. So I'm gonna turn it back over to the board.
Okay. Do we want to see which of the items members of the board have particular questions about, or do we want to go through each item on the capital improvement plan?
Well, we did go through the items, so I'm not certain. I know there were questions related to, Park Road and, Seed Road Phase 5, I believe. So there were questions there. In addition, there was also, information brought up during the meeting related to the capital improvement plan about sidewalks on Scio Church Road, which is not included in the plan. So that might be a good starting point to really address those three, and then any other questions that you might have.
And I saw also a message from Trustee Carey just late today, asking to put another item on the capital improvement plan. Did you want to discuss that this evening?
Well, Jared Levina has been,
Right.
contacting us for 2 years now, I think, something like that.
Not quite that long.
Well, then he's been bringing it up to me longer. Anyway, it dawned on me, and I spoke with, Manager Parker just a few minutes before the meeting, that there's a transportation planning committee, kind of, and we're working. She okay? Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. Sorry, lots of weird things happen in Scio, so I'm just, so it's SEMCOG. We've talked with SEMCOG, had a couple meetings with SEMCOG, and there is a grant that we are in the process of applying for. Of course, it has to come in front of the board, but it is money for a transportation planner. And I was thinking that maybe that's what, well, not just me, but Jan Culbertson and Kathy, Jessica, you were in there too. But anyway, have a transportation planner come in, look at all of our needs. And then we plan according to priority and also the report of the planner.
Oh, okay.
Because right now what I'm seeing is, oh, we're gonna throw this sidewalk idea over here, and then we have another idea over here, and we're just kind of piecemealing things together. We don't really know the big picture.
Well, I think that's a great idea to seek a grant for a transportation planner. I'm glad to know about that. But I would differ with your characterization of sort of just throwing things out there without any kind of plan. The elements of for example, the Scio Church sidewalk gap project that we're hoping to talk about in a minute is something that is part of the overall pathway network plan that has been talked about since.
Okay, so who's making decisions that that's more important than other sidewalk plans within the community?
Well, there was a TAP committee that was in existence for several years. It's now been merged into the Parks Preserves and Pathways Committee. And those bodies have been looking at how to improve and implement pedestrian connectivity throughout the township. The plan was the overall plan that I think is actually referred to in Clerk Flintoff's memo for this evening.
I read it.
Yeah, okay, good. So she's referring to that plan when she talks about Seed Road being the backbone and the other elements of the pathway sort of extending off from that central corridor. That this is part of that plan. So it's not
Yeah,
that
but
we
there's a
haven't
lot of
had a
other
plan.
plans too, like the pathway along Honey Creek. I mean, there's all kinds of plans that the TAP people
Yeah,
have
plan-
created. So who is picking the
plan-
most important out of all of those plans?
Well, no, the overall plan has been modified and adapted over time. At one point, there was talk about creating pedestrian bridges over I-94, and then we got more information about how much that costs, and we looked at for alternatives. It's an adaptable, sort of changing, evolving plan, but there is a plan.
Then when is that, when is that plan gonna come in front of the board?
Well, it's an.
Or is it somebody is picking what is most important and then giving it to the board and saying, oh, here, we need to adopt this?
Well, I think what it sounds to me like you're saying, Trustee Carey, is that it's arbitrary and that there's no overall plan and that there hasn't been discussion of it. But that plan has been a part of the land use master plan. You'll find it there. And it's also referred to in the PROS plan, the
Yeah,
Parks.
and I understand that along with other plans. So that's where I'm trying to understand who's choosing what is most important out of all those plans.
Well,
And also, are we gonna finish some of our projects first before we start moving on to other projects? Because we have Zeb Road that's just, hanging there, and then there's Park Road that we're talking about. And, so we're gonna just start playing our projects, and who's gonna finish these before we move to the next one?
well, I think the idea is that you can multitask. If you're a local government, you can do some projects at the same time. They can overlap. You don't
Really?
have to do
Believe the
one
women.
and then move on to the next one. In fact, in some ways, I think what we're talking about are priorities in terms of serving the greater number of residents, finishing segments of pathway or sidewalk that have been started. For example, the Scio Ridge Uplands project, this Scio Church segment is like phase 2 of that project.
Oh, now it's phase 2. Okay, so this is the thing, is that why aren't we being presented with all the plans so the board can decide?
Well, we are talking about them this evening, but those plans have
There's
been
other
adopted.
there's other plans in the parks and pathways.
The Parks Recreation Open Space Plan, the PROS plan, does include multiple different projects. Some of them are moving forward even as we speak. They're adding a trailhead and a parking lot to the Van Curler Preserve. There's, planning going on for other.
So is it just where the most votes are? Because this is what I'm trying to get at is, we get this all of a sudden that, driving home, there's some people pushing a stroller in the snow, and then all of a sudden it's the most important thing, when there's other things that, like, you're talking about, people walking in the road over in your neighborhood, but then we have Jared Labina. I want to know who's making these decisions of these projects that are most important. Shouldn't that come in front of the board more than one project?
Well, I'll wait for my time to talk. When you folks are done with your.
Well, I'm just,
A little
the only point I wanted to make is that there are plans, there are master plans for land use that involve, that touch upon this pathway network that's there. You can find it there. And there are plans in the PROS plan. It's not that we're without plans. It's not that there hasn't been community input and prioritization. I think it's great to.
Right, but who's
think about.
choosing the list out of the list? Because it's not just 1 or 2 projects in the PROS plan or the master plan. Who's choosing those?
Wouldn't it be the board? I mean,
Exactly, but it's not being presented in front of us.
It's the board.
Okay, but there's 1 or 2 plans coming in front of us, and there's all kinds of other plans, but we're not able to choose those because they haven't been presented, is my point.
Trustee Carey, you're welcome to bring proposals to the board for consideration by the board, but as we all know, the board as a whole is where the authority resides. It's not
I
like
understand that.
somebody.
You're missing my point.
Okay, what is the point that I'm missing?
Okay, there's lots of plans in the township for sidewalks, let's say, or pathways. And you just said it's in the master plan, it's in the PROS plan, all of that. But there's only 1 or 2 that's being presented to the board. Why are we able to choose from all of them?
I think we are, and I think you're right, there's a network with respect to paths. there is a network of paths that was envisioned back in 2017 by the then TAP. And it takes it from the southeast section up through Saginaw Forest, up to Jackson Road, over to the border, over to the Zeb Road pathway, up to the border to border. So there is this long-term goal of getting non-motorized pathways that kind of like a mini border to border, if you will, within Scio Township. That is something that has been under discussion. I wouldn't say that there are plans. It is included in various plans, these concepts, these ideas. And then where they get on a Capitol Road with respect to the Scio Church, I'm looking to get that onto the 6-year capital improvement plan when it's time for engineering and for construction. That is something that has been envisioned, because I used to go to those TAP meetings as a resident as different phases. In fact, the initial sidewalk from about a year ago, half a year ago, was called phase 1. Phase 1 of the other phase. There are preliminary drawings for the other one. But just because there should be pathways, I think there should be better bus stops where the gentleman has been emailing us, and I would support you in adding that to the capital. I also think that there should be Park Road pathway at the eastern section where Park Road connects with Zeb Road, where you have density in those three. You got Trailwoods, you got Arbor Point, you've got
Country French.
So I think it makes sense to put pathways where there's density and people to use them, and pathways where they make a difference in keeping people safe.
So there's
I'm
only
just speaking for
three
myself. What's
three
that?
projects and that's it,
No,
as far
I
as
didn't-
sidewalks.
I didn't say that. I mean, I
Okay,
would.
but that's the point, is that, you know, Park Road, I'm not saying that none of these or any of them are not worthy of being on the capital improvement plan, but we don't know the big picture. We just have somebody giving us, oh, this is a good idea, this is a good idea.
And if they are, they should warrant being included on the capital improvement plan. And then the question becomes, how do we fund it? Do we use millages for it? Do we use general fund? Do we use grants? Do we use regional funding?
I just sent you
Funding,
this, but you know, it's only for 6 years, so everything we put on here is supposed to be completed within a 6-year
and
I don't.
I don't
think
That's
that-
what I read from here.
so, but I guess I'm gonna yield, but did Matt have a presentation?
Well, he does, and we could turn to that, and maybe
No, I
that would
wanna
be.
say
No, I'm not trying to.
Maybe that would be helpful, but let's give it all, trustee Noel a turn.
Okay, my understanding is the capital improvement plan can be modified at any time during the interval.
That's
it's in
correct.
force.
Yes.
At any
Okay.
point in time.
Okay.
It's a plan.
So it is conceptual in nature to some extent, and it's aspirational in nature to some extent. As I see it, from what I'm being told, I want to hear from Joyce on
No,
this.
you're correct.
Okay, so we can just keep
But I
adding
think
things
just-
more and more. You
Jillian,
can keep, and then, I mean, then they just become pipe dreams.
I think what you're saying is you perceive that these projects that John is talking about have been prioritized
Yeah.
somehow tonight. And I'm not so sure they have been.
And I'm not positing that.
Okay, I didn't take it that way. But it sounds like Jillian did.
Okay.
And I think I think there's more fluidity to this capital improvement plan than what you're perceiving.
Oh, no, I understand all of that, but I'm just, you know, again, why are these certain projects being presented to us when there could be other options? And 6 years, we should be able to have, and it does, we're supposed to by statute and ordinance prioritize. So we can put 100 things on here, but really, we should be realistic and what we can actually complete within 6 years. And then,
Well, my recollection of the capital improvement plan is that it has it showed near-term projects and then longer term, sort of looking out, further out. And it's not just for 6 years, it's looking out even further
Well,
than that.
you evaluate it every year, so if you're evaluating it, you may be adding to the plan an additional year.
We're taking away.
Taking it off.
Taking away something.
Right.
yes,
Yeah.
So you're right.
It's
And the members of the public who've asked about, how come where the township is not looking at this more frequently? The township should look at it more frequently. And I think that's the intent, is to make this something more front burner.
I don't know, I guess I just have reservations about these projects that are being, presented to us, especially for the Park Road, that 700 letters went out to residents saying that the township was imposing a special assessment on them for that project. And I don't ever remember that coming in front of the board. So that's where I'm coming from. And I just want to make sure that whatever's on here is legitimate and it's not somebody's agenda, that it's the benefit of the whole.
Well, shall we start talking about specific projects, or would it be helpful to have Matt's presentation, or?
Yeah, I don't know if he has a presentation.
Well, I think Matt does have additional information to share and some clarification, as trustee Carey had mentioned, as far as funding for various projects with Park Road. He has additional information on the funding. And then I guess the other comment, as far as how some of these items got on the list here, as part of the budgeting process, each department did look at what they envision as their needs over a time frame. And that's built into the plan with some understanding of potential funding. So for example, like with the water and sewer fund, there are dedicated funds in water and sewer to cover the costs over this time frame.
Yeah, I think the water sewer is the most complete out of the
Yeah,
capital improvement.
And for the township hall with the HVAC system, that's something that we will need. So part of moving forward with looking at funding for the HVAC system, it should be part of your plan, because if it's in your plan, the other advantage is being able to access funding even at the state and federal level if it's part of a plan.
Yep.
So we could start with Matt with his comments.
Yeah, maybe that'd be a good way to segue into the conversation.
Yeah, good evening. Matt Parks with OHM. I think just to kind of encapsulate everything, and Mary, I think Sally and Mark are big panelists. And I might refer to those two to pull up a PowerPoint eventually, but I didn't really, we have a formal presentation really focused on two projects, Zeeb and Park, that are listed in the capital improvement plan. I know at the previous board meeting, there's a lot of questions about Park specifically. So we wanted to dissect that because there are some numbers in the capital improvement plan that we spent some time clarifying and met with the road commission and just trying to get it simplified, and worked with staff and Plant Miranda to revise that and get those up to date. But before I really get into those projects, I want to characterize capital improvement plans, and in general, I think Trustee Knoll hit the nail on the head, really. She and the conversation was kind of enlightening just to listen, but really what that is it's a plan, a living, breathing document where it's really a tool that the township uses to connect with their department heads and different residents or anybody really. And they really can be pipe dream projects. It really should be a way to help communicate and gather information, and you use it as a tool to budget. So township chose 6 years as its near term. I don't think you should mischaracterize a 6-year plan and a long range plan with the budget or authorization of a project. This does not authorize or budget or even talk about how you're gonna finance. It really just collects projects and numbers and data so the board can discuss it to make decisions. So you, as a board, can say, we need a presentation on this project so we can learn more about it. So really, I think it's a little, you know, CIPs can be something that you follow by the book, and some communities do, and they're very exact on it. Some, you know, 25% of the things might get built. It's really up to a lot of different economic factors, staff. It takes staff within the township to execute these things, and the desire and the need. A lot of times you put them on, you put projects on a plan, because if they're not on a plan, it's harder to secure funding and grants and all the things you were talking about before. So I just want to make sure, as we're talking about this and we're talking about Zeeb or Park or any project, this is not saying we're gonna build this in this fiscal year and it's gonna cost us much. It's a best guess. Numbers are subject to change, dates are certainly subject to change, and priorities and needs are very subject to change. What's important today might be totally not important in 2 years. So just keep that in mind and keep an open mind as we talk tonight, because I don't want this group to get caught up in, you know, priorities and needs. Although it can have a priority and you can set fiscal year dates to it. Until this comes back to the board in form of a motion with a design proposal or an award to a contractor, it's not real. So just keep that in mind. So, so I don't know what your pleasure is, if you want me to maybe start with Zeeb. I do have Mark Locke and Sally on. I was gonna give a very high level overview. I think Zeeb, though, there was very few questions about. I think it's pretty straightforward. The big thing I wanna communicate with Zeeb is it's definitely been in a plan. It's definitely been part of a big effort previously with TAP, now with PPP, to build this north-south connector to the border to border. We have done 4 phases, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 4 being the last one furthest to the north. Phase 5 is the most critical, I think, and most complicated one. I do want to make sure the board understands that there's been MDNR trust fund grant money and also connecting community county grant money received and used as part of it. And so to complete the obligations of those, phase 5 is the hardest and the last piece of that. So preliminary engineering was authorized to OHM. We're completed with that. So now we're basically at a point where we have an estimated cost, which I believe is reflected properly in the CIP, as well as a schedule. I have slides, I can take you through it, but if there's no questions on it, we can move to Park, which I know there's questions about that.
I think the question that came up related to Z Road, phase 5 is with the funding, and as mentioned earlier in a previous meeting, we do have Plant Moran looking at that question, but we have the grant funding as well as the park millage funding to support the project, but we'll be able to confirm those dollars and bring that information back to the board.
And we would do that prior to authorizing the next phase, which would be engineering.
Yeah, there's about final engineering design, so we're approximately at 30% design. There's about $200,000 left in permitting and design cost for that. Eagle, Amtrak, MDOT, rail permits, and then easements. I know Township Project Manager has been working on contacting, there's 3 property owners that are impacted. Township has made contact with them in the past. They're aware of everything, but that is progressing. But our scope of work is pretty much completed at this point in time with preliminary engineering. What we have provided the township was preliminary draft plans. Again, I have slides and I have Mark here if we wanted to dive into it, but we have an alignment. There's a fairly substantial pedestrian bridge, a retaining wall, switchback, and then a rail crossing. Total cost of the whole thing together, including engineering and inspection and everything, is about 3.5 million. That should be in the CIP. One thing I do want to reiterate though is this is not something where we just design you know, this year and we build it next year. This is probably a 2-year out design and permitting project. So we're really looking at a schedule that is pretty long-term. So I think that you have some flexibility and fluidity in how you want to finance it with the millage, with, you know, different opportunities. The bidding really would probably not occur until fall of 25, so almost 24 months from now or so. And then you would look at a spring construction start. So really between now and fall, you're only looking at a $200,000 expense. And then starting in spring of 26, really, that's when the contractor would be mobilized and start working. And it would basically be open summer of 27. And that's just because I think the permitting is very, very complicated.
MDOT, rail, or Amtrak, or
Yes,
road?
and Eagle.
And people's houses and. Okay.
Yeah, no, road commission is pretty straightforward. They've already actually
Eagle
looked.
has the river.
Eagle because of the river and Amtrak because of the rail. And the rail, I would say, is the most challenging part. And we're dealing with it right now on border to border. It just takes time.
To get across the tracks.
Yeah, and I just don't wanna, I'm pretty good at not over promising and under delivering. So that's what I think it'll take. And honestly, time is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I know you want to complete it, but it also gives you time to save money up for this. It's a big one. It probably is rivaling what the pathway is cost from here up to the point where it's built. This next section will be every bit of much effort as all of it combined. So, so that's why it's in there. That's why I think CIPs are good, because it gets it down on paper. It lets people understand. It lets people ask questions. And Mark and Sally, if I'm forgetting anything,
They were on the screen instead of you.
that's fine. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I'm happy to answer questions. We have some pretty slides, but I also know there's a lot to get through tonight, so I don't wanna bog it down with this. Before we, if Scio chooses to, you know, move this forward and ask for a proposal, we'll be back in front of you to present the design proposal. There'll be multiple public meetings before construction. There'll be a public meeting with the contractor before construction. So there's lots of opportunities to chime in. Really the key with this one is, again, the permits, and our scope was to do the topographic survey, to do the soil borings, to get the preliminary estimate, to work with the homeowners and or businesses that are impacted, and come up with a schedule and timeline, and that's been fulfilled. We're slightly under the authorized budget, so we have, you know, I think right around $8,000 or $9,000 left in our budget, and that right now we're helping Chris Chang with whatever help he needs with the easement with those funds, but that's within the scope and ability to do that. But that's pretty much it for that job. Mark Locke is my project manager. He's been involved in previous phases of this. He's one of my experts in terms of transportation. Works closely with MDOT and the road commission, so that's why I picked him. And any questions on that?
Trustee Gary.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can't
I
see
have a
her.
question. This is actually a question that Jessica had. And I'm trying to make sense of it. She's saying that the 208 Parks Fund shows a plan for phase 5 of the zebra pathway, but no other pathways. And that this is in contrast to prior years' plans for pathways, which included the zebra pathway and other segments. So have these other potential pathways been omitted in error?
One of the other segments is, we're gonna discuss in a moment to put back on, and that's the Park Road segment. That is one of the side segments. And that will connect with sort of pathways and trails going westward. The other, I would argue, is the one that John plans to bring a motion for this evening, and that's finishing the segment that would reach down towards the southeast corner of the township. All of these are segments, and I I think maybe part of the confusion about the segments is that some of them are to be built by developers, and that's, you know, intentional, and they were asked for as part of community benefits. So for example,
Crosswinds or what?
Woodview, well, Trailwoods
Trailwoods
is
is
building
Trailwoods,
pathways
but-
right now.
But there's
But
also
Woodview Commons has a major pathway segment that would come across.
Liberty and Wagner.
And
What's
right,
that called?
you're right, Crossroads is the name of it. It's, you know, kind of still hanging out there, but one of their community benefits is to finish the sidewalk that would connect that intersection with Wagner and Liberty with Scio Ridge. So there's segments of this that we're financing as community benefits as part of developments.
So we don't put that on our capital improvement plan?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I'm thinking that it was probably a separate process before putting this together. I mean, we could include it, but look at funding through other sources in order to track it. But I think like with Trailwoods, that's pretty, almost complete.
They're getting closer, but yes, there's, and then Woodview Commons is under construction in that phase of, their construction. I think the pathway comes towards the end of their construction. Which sort of makes sense because then there'll be all the people out there to use it.
And I think, you know, the other part of having something in the plan is actually looking at the township's direct involvement. I think we're involved in the projects through community benefits with the development agreement, but it's not directly overseen by the township. Whereas the projects that are in the plan are projects where potentially the township would move that project forward.
But we have some oversight because we're approving these
Right,
site plans.
right, but
and-
financially, that's what I was getting at, yeah.
Well, Jessica has moved, I think, recently to create a tracking for community benefits of all kinds
Yeah,
in the ledger.
yeah.
Okay.
And there's high level planning, like you could even go to your long range, and again, like what Joyce said. You know, you can build onto this every year, review it every year, but. You know, if there's your north-south backbone of Zeeb and your east-west, there's some gaps there. I mean, you can use high level planning numbers and not necessarily identify. You know, segment between this road and this road, or this address and this address, but you can use high level planning numbers like $1,000 a foot for paved. $1,500 a foot for boardwalk, and you can start filling that in as part of your long range. There's a whole bunch of different high level planning numbers you can throw in there. I think this is the birth of this new version of this plan. There's no problem with editing it for next year to get in there, and I think, you know, that's part of your PPP committee's probably task to look at that and think about, okay, what do we do? The other thing I've heard Clerk Flintoff mentioned before is just maintenance of these paths. It's very important because, you know, as you're spending right now a lot of capital on paths and very little in maintenance. In 10 years, you're gonna see it level out, and then in 20 years, you might see it flip flop where the majority of your money that you collect through millage or whatever is going to be spent on maintenance as you grow your network, and your capital costs will go down. Your maintenance will be, you know, start off as pretty simple, replacing screws, boards, splintered piece of wood, potholes, cracks. And then you'll go from that to not building new because your network's complete, but you'll be milling, overlaying or replacing chunks. So that's just why this needs to be fluid, because you're going to, you know, adjust it over time. In more mature communities like Ypsilanti, we're not building a lot of new pathway, we're rehabbing existing. Where in greenfield areas or whatever, like even the county with border to border, they're building new. So, and you'll see it adjust.
I have a couple of questions. Regarding maintenance, should that be part of the capital improvement plan? Or is that a separate,
I think, well,
how does that? Because, you know, I'm just concerned about money, you know, and looking at everything that we're doing. And again, there's some.
my opinion is that should be part of your budget, not your capital improvement.
Okay.
That's really a budgeting activity, and your capital is really identifying those larger capital expenditures for creating new. Now, if your capital, if your maintenance is getting into like, you know, rehabbing existing 2 mile segments and they're becoming, you know, $1 million expenditures, then perhaps it belongs there. But for right now, I think the level of spending that you guys are really in need of doing for maintenance is fairly small, probably well under 6 figures. Probably less than, probably a quarter of that.
I think we have a GL number. I spoke with Anna. I think we talked about it and we allocated 20,000.
Yeah.
It
That
is
makes
in
sense.
the budget.
It is in the budget,
I
okay.
believe that is correct. I know that the budget numbers for pathway maintenance have been provided to Plant Moran, so that should be accounted for elsewhere.
That's
Okay.
Sally.
Yeah, hi Sally.
Hello.
I have some questions about Z Road pathway project. You said we needed easements from, or I'm sorry, EPA and Eagle, I'm
Permits from
sorry, Eagle
and MDOT Amtrak.
and what if they would, what if they say no? Has that ever happened?
You're doing it wrong.
Generally, they will come back with conditions that need to be addressed,
Okay.
and we will work with them in an iterative process to fulfill their requirements. It's very rare that they come back with a straight no, and Mark can
Okay.
probably speak more to that, but usually it's an iterative process on permitting to get to a point where they will agree that we have met their conditions.
That's
Okay,
correct.
good. And I'm hoping that that was thought of way back when we started.
Yeah, and you,
this.
townships actually already received and gathered easements, permanent easements needed for the project. I believe the only thing that we need now after we've done the preliminary engineering is we need temporary easements, because it can be, the path can live and be within the permanent easement that township already has. But to build it, we need a little bit more room. So it's, you know, basically an agreement with the owner that says, we're gonna build it, we're gonna grade it, we're gonna put your driveway back as good or better than we found it, and, you know, so on and so forth. So really, that's really where we're at. That was an initiative, previous folks that were on tap and other things started. Township held, I think back in 2017, 18, they did, or maybe it was 2019, they had a public meeting here for the whole Z Road pathway. They came in, there was a presentation done by various folks. And then they actually, Carla Wortman was here and they did, had easements prepared and people were able to sign them on the spot. They gathered quite a bit. And then there were some that resisted and some that needed some convincing, but the township did a really good job of getting that, you know, years ago. So a lot of this has been put in motion for a really long time. And the biggest thing I can't underestimate saying is, you know, connecting communities is such a great program that County Parks runs. You guys have already taken advantage of it. Many communities take advantage of that every other year or so. And right now, you're kind of not able to leverage that until you complete this last phase of ZEEP. So, you know, not to prioritize it or not to say we need to go fast because, you know, you're not able to take advantage of it, but that's one good reason. You know, you've already taken advantage of that money, and to not build ZEEP or to not fulfill those obligations that you not only did with county, but also MDNR grant. You know, I don't know what they would do if they would make you refund that money or whatnot, but there's several $100,000 in county and several $100,000 of.
So that pipeline is trough, that's full until.
It's halted.
Now, the good news is, you know, Porter Border's just getting wrapped up and under construction now, and there's one more phase coming. So, I mean, the timing is good. The timing is kind of like this next couple years to connect the 2 points really is optimal, so.
One more question. How much did you guesstimate for the finish of Z Road 5? Because this.
So,
This is what,
Sally, you
6
wanna
million?
pop up slide 5 of 20, just to kind of go through that. Mary, if we could bring her back up.
Because here we have close to 6 million, a little under 6 million, not including engineering. But
C5.
yeah, I think I'm adding this right to for.
We have, so we have a construction cost, pure construction cost in today's dollars. We have a little bit of of a contingency in there to probably plan for 25, 26, but 2.7 million, there's a slide right there. The permitting rail costs, Amtrak, we have, and that includes Amtrak, MDOT inspection of that and oversight of that of 200, which I think is a fairly conservative number. Final engineering design of 200, construction engineering of 400 for a total of 3.5.
Okay, well, it looks like we have some extra money to put somewhere else. Well, according to you.
Yeah.
But anyways, all right, thank you.
And then, Sally, if you could go down 2 more to the schedule. This is very rough, but this kind of shows you like, again, capital improvement plan, we don't have to determine how you're gonna finance it, how you're gonna pay for it. I think it's important to kind of have a gut feel of, are we even in the right ballpark? But really, you're looking at, you know, engineering design kickoff, which was 200,000 on that previous slide. Between now and 2025, design finalization, that's really your ask. So the budget that you guys will approve, whether it's in the budget this year or not, I'm not 100% sure. But if it's not, then the next fiscal year, that's really where what you need to spend. That 2.7 in construction and that construction engineering and permitting, so the balance of that, really 3.2 million, really won't start being asked for until after bidding of fall of 25 or until spring of 26, really. And it's not like once you start construction, it's all due at once. The contractor gets paid as they construct. So even that 3.2 million will kind of be spread out over the course of probably 12 months of construction. So you have time to start thinking about it now. And that's, I think, the whole purpose of capital improvement plan, to make sure you have time to think about how to finance this as a board and talk about it and meet about it. So, and have the PPP really be the driver of it to you. As much as OHM loves coming to you and answering all your questions, like really, it should be driven by the committees and the department heads.
Yeah, I think that we should have some more, probably at the next capital improvement plan meeting, maybe have those committee members. I'm looking at the pros plan right now, and there's all kinds of projects in here. Thank you, Caitlin, for showing that to me, but yeah, I'd like to hear from them. But yeah, good. Okay, thanks. That's very helpful.
Park Road.
Park Road's a little different, but similar in a lot of ways. And we didn't talk about, one thing we did not talk about also, there is MEDC funds that the township has applied for, received. So you have some money there. There's a little bit of a timeline with that money. Park Road's kind of in the same boat. There is MEDC money that was given to the township for this. So Park Road, similar or different, and I think this one's valid, that why there was a lot of confusion. Even I was a little bit caught off guard at a BOT meeting, but there was a fairly large number in the CIP initially. And a lot of that has to do with some complexity. So in this case, Mary, I want to walk through the PowerPoint because this one I think will make a lot more sense to the public watching at home and everybody here. We can kind of walk through it slowly. So Park Road, as you all know, as Trailwoods gets built out and continues to see homes built, this year you will see a couple of road improvements that are developer driven but required by the road commission. The first being the Stabler Road and Park Road intersection realignment, and I know the board has been in the loop on that, but that's gonna happen. And then they're also gonna pave Park Road from Stabler across their frontage to Cedar Ridge. So
Halfway?
with pathway, the pathway's already there.
About halfway.
About halfway, correct. So if you look there, the red there is what's gonna remain dirt. So west of that line, where you can see that aerial where Trailwoods is still under construction, that will all be paved. So they're virtually will be paved from that point west, and then everything obviously will be paved up Stabler Road all the way to Jackson. So you're gonna have this orphaned piece of dirt road between Zeeb and Cedar Ridge, which is fine. Previously, when talking to the road commission about this, one of the things that's gonna happen is as this road gets paved, they expect more trips, more use of this road. I think even without paving this red strip that you see there, you're gonna see an increased traffic flow on the road, which is part of the reason why, you know, we're already seeing increased traffic and volumes on that road and dust problems and safety problems and people complaining and whatnot. But the one thing that really drove up some of our costs and fears were a couple things. The intersection at Park and Zeeb needed to be improved. That's getting into a primary road of Scio in a very expensive intersection.
Can I ask why that is?
Traffic
Traffic safety? For people entering on from Park onto Z get hit because of.
Coming every which way. And I would say more about stacking on northbound Zeeb to turn left to make the shortcut, so you don't have to do the Michigan U on Jackson. If you're going, say you're living in the polo fields and you want to go to Menards. People cut using that as a shortcut. Then also drainage. There's been a lot of conversation about drainage in and around Arbor Point, Country French, Zeeb Road area, Park Grove, all of that. So the township board authorized a preliminary engineering study because all of this was being talked about. And township said, boy, it would be nice to know, what are we talking about here? Is this $1 million, $2 million, $3 million? What do we know? And not only that, but what is the road commission gonna expect in terms of intersection improvements? So bear with me here. As we got authorized for that, the township board authorized OHM, there's a $90,000 preliminary engineering. And I don't even want to say study, it was just preliminary engineering. So things you would have to do no matter what to build this. We did the topographic survey, we did soil borings, we did a drainage study, and we worked with the road commission to find out the intersection needs. What we came back with was pretty interesting. The intersection of Park, if you can envision, kind of by Mancino's. Park comes down from the east side of Zeeb at an angle, and when it hits Zeeb, then it flattens out. So it's a very strange kind of intersection, as you can see there. When we got looking at that intersection, more and more, it was looked at, it's a 50-mile-per-hour road with 55-mile-per-hour design speed. Mark, if I'm butchering anything, you can speak up, but basically what we found is if Zeeb Road was red and it allowed through traffic on Park, that angle and curve was a little too fast and a little too dangerous to navigate. So we started looking at alternatives, and actually the road commission hired another consultant, not OHM, to look at this intersection for a roundabout. Sally, you can go to the next slide. So Kimley Horn was hired by the road commission to look at that, and this is the concept. Has not been fully designed, but basically this would be the improvement that they would desire to see here. It's complicated because Zeeb goes from 2 lanes to 4 lanes at that intersection. The skew, a lot of issues, but holy cow, when they looked at it from a traffic calming standpoint, from a traffic management standpoint, from a safety and pedestrian standpoint, they kind of fell in love with it. And actually it was slightly cheaper than doing a signalized intersection. Not by much, but I guess to get to the point this is about a $2.7 million intersection improvement. Joyce had called a meeting with the road commission a few weeks ago. We met, we agreed, and they concurred too that, you know, this would never be something that the township would be asked to fund. So they're going to go look at a couple of options. There's carbon reduction grants, there's safety grants, there's federal lots funds out there. They're gonna look into seeing, primarily because it's a primary road, but they also know that the township doesn't have $2.7 million laying around to fund this project. So the road commission said 2 really key things out of that meeting. And if I forget anything, remind me, but 2 things. Park Road, if it needs to be paved, the road commission understands the need for it to be paved at some point in the future because of the dust, because of the traffic, because of the environmental issues. They would separate that being a need, and the intersection can wait until funding can be in place. So we could do it together as one project, but they also said it might be till 27, 28 until we get funding, we do a design, and we can build it. They detached the need to do the intersection with the paving of the road. So now we're going from a $4.5 million project to build the roundabout, the intersection and the road to now we're talking about a $1.8 million paving of Park Road.
They also, just to make sure we don't skip over it, they also were clear that they were looking to the township for some kind of match.
For the intersection.
Intersection project, and we talked about various potential sources for that, but we don't have to. It's years from now, so we don't have to solve that problem.
Yeah.
So that 1.8 that's for the eastern part of Park Road as it approaches the west where the developer will have paved, correct? Does that include road paving? And does that also include pathway adjacent there too?
It includes pathway, road, curb and gutter, and also routes all the stormwater coming off of Park, traveling across Zeb Road, down the existing storm sewer system on Zeb Road, which there's plenty of capacity for it to take.
There's capacity.
So we did a drainage study, and the designer of Zeb Road, I won't take any credit for it, but Mark can. But when Zeb Road got designed by the road commission years ago and got expanded out to 4 lanes, storm sewer pipe was put in, and it was sized appropriately to handle that drainage. So there's plenty of capacity. So all that water that kind of comes down Park, and about that red area that I showed you on that map, about half of that drains to the east, half of it drains to the west. The part that drains to the west has been sized, and the ditch has been sized by the Trailwoods engineer. It'll accept it. But that water on the east just kind of mutates down the road.
That's our road, right?
Ruts the road. It also kind of turns south and goes into the Country French Pond. Some of that migrates across the street into the culvert that goes under Zeb. So this would basically contain all that water and then send it north down that storm sewer.
Where there's
to Honey Creek.
Okay.
So
is it a 66-foot right away?
I believe, I don't know, Mark might know that offhand, but I think we have, I think it is 66, it might be 86.
Be contained in on the north, along the north side.
On the north side, yep, we put, so in our estimate of the 1.8-ish, and it's a little bit less than that, it's 1.78. It includes some tree removal, of course, but tree replacement, curb and gutter. It shifts the road slightly to the south, and winds the pathway through the north side to impact the trees as minimal as possible. The other thing that road commission said is, if the township were to fund this paving of Park Road, the part that would be later built over the roundabout that would be impacted, they could do like a sacrificial thinner layer of asphalt. So then when the roundabout came, we weren't tearing up, a brand new road. Because when they build the roundabout, they'll taper out a couple hundred feet. So all in all, kind of the key takeaway is it's not a $5 million project. It really, if you were to put this into your budget or into your CIP, it really should be listed as a $1.8 million construction project. The remaining engineering that's left is about $100,000 to go out to bid and put out a bidding document, and about $275,000 of construction engineering. So all in all, you're looking at like a $2.1, $2.2 million project at the most.
Does that include that match that Will brought up?
And then there's, no, that does not include the match. That would be later. That would be about 10% of about a 2.7 million. So another 250, and really that's negotiable. The higher the match, the about more federal funds you can get. That's something that you should maybe not put in there now. And I think you need to sit down with the road commission again later.
And one option, just to bear in mind, is that intersection, unlike that segment of Park Road, is in the DDA district. So a source of funding is available for the intersection improvement that is not available for the Park Road.
So, 1.8 million, it's not a small project by any means. But you're looking at, somewhere in the $2.2 million range. The township has secured some MEDC funding. That's what I think was used to pay us for the preliminary engineering. And I don't recall what those numbers are offhand.
800,000 total to start, so it's now down closer to 700,000.
Yeah, so if you're at, 2.2 million minus 800,000, you're really looking at a cost about 1.3-ish that would be left. And, different things have been talked about, they're about 350,000 of that project is pathway related. So if you really want to look at the road fund, you could use PPP millage monies for that, although ZEB is taking a pretty good chunk of that. That's an option. I know Trailwoods in their PUD agreement and their road improvement agreement subjects them to potentially contributing towards this in form of an SAD. And I don't want to get political or talk about SADs and whether that's right or wrong, but just to kind of put it into perspective, if you're down to 1.3 million dollars left for Park Road and the pathway, and say you did pay 350,000 out of the pathway, so now you're left with about $1 million between Trailwoods and then again, not to say Country French and Arbor Point should pay their fair share, but there's probably close to 900 houses in there. You can do the quick and easy math. You're looking at about $1,000 off.
We can't do a special assessment like that.
I'm not telling you you can or can't. I'm just doing the
Yeah.
math. You can figure that out.
But I do have other questions.
Because it's not lawful or
It's not lawful because it has to, special assessments are for a special benefit to the parcel. So there's no road frontage. So let's talk about other things right now because I don't want to get in.
Yes, let's not get into that.
Yeah, okay, Matt, regarding the roundabout there in that area, so for pedestrians, because this is a big issue over there, people, Joyce used to live in that area and to walk across that's pretty dangerous, but if there's a roundabout, what about the safety of the pedestrians? I mean, is there
crosswalks?
something, but I would never cross that road, no matter if it was a four-way stop or four-way, light but we have to make sure.
Yeah, there's standards. I mean, ZEB Road pathway is going to go through a roundabout when that's done with construction.
So that'll be our test to see how many people.
No, I think if it were up to me,
Department's right there.
unsignalized intersections, the most dangerous to cross, especially with gravel trains and other high-speed traffic coming across, but roundabouts are gonna slow the traffic down enormously. It also lends, and Mark, you can chime in if you want, but not only that, there's splitter islands and gives you refuge. So you're crossing literally 12 foot at a time and you're only looking one direction. So in a lot of ways, roundabouts are a lot safer to cross. It does get into a little trickiness. I know Oakland County, there's major intersections like Orchard Lake and 12 Mile or Orchard Lake and 14 Mile is one. And there's hawk systems in different ways.
They have lights
Right.
there, whereas this one at Liberty does not have any way to cross without,
There's no sidewalks over there anyway.
there's no sidewalks, so it's a dangerous.
Yeah.
And that's what this is looking to be also.
And the road commission will look into all that, but I mean, this by far in a way is going to really, in a lot of ways, be part of your ZEB Road connection. Cause if you think about it, people now in Trailwoods can walk along this pathway, connect to the sidewalk along ZEB and get all the way up to the border.
Here's a resident that was asking me about having his children cross there to get to Polo Fields to visit friends, and I was having anxiety thinking about it. But but the roundabout is going to slow traffic, but I'm thinking about the kids that would go from friend's house. So, okay, if there's something to think about in the future. And another thing is, we know you touched on the drainage issues and that the drainage going, that way and this way. But we're not taking into account, and maybe you have, that's what I'm asking, for new builds, because there's Arbory Grove that is a potential over there. There's some other parcels that could potentially be improved or developed. So the more we have impermeable surfaces, that's going to contribute. Now, we know Arbory Grove already has flooding issues back there, you know. I mean, actually, the whole neighborhood, I even had to, you know, for a flood drain for my neighborhood. So is that going to impact potential new builds, or do we deal with the drainage issues with the new builds at that time, or how do we?
This is only just subtracting out any existing drainage, and like, just to be honest, Park Road, even though it's a dirt road, it has significant runoff because it's compacted down pretty tightly. There's a storm sewer that would intercept that. The one thing that we could look at to even improve, like and Kathy's probably gonna yell, is a Park Grove. Parkwood, thank you. I always mess that up. I mix my parks and woods and groves. But the Country French Pond actually outlets across into the U of M Lake drain. We could actually look at rerouting that outlet structure into this potentially even as an added benefit. We would need their cooperation, potential easement, but I do wanna, you know, and I've heard a lot of public comment on that one, but a lot of Parkwood's issues are that they're in a floodplain.
Yeah.
And that it's a low-lying area and they have their own drainage problems. I don't even want to get into Arbory Groves or what that is or is not gonna do, but this project will only help. This will not hurt or harm. This will take any drainage that is rogue or comes off of Park and kind of meanders its way south or across the street will now be intercepted and taken away from them. So this is only positive for everyone there, so.
Good to hear.
Thank you. Further questions about Park Road project?
So do we have some sense of when the western part of Park Road is going to have pavement and pathway?
This summer.
This summer?
I think pathway's built, because it's actually physically on the trail with the
It's mostly
property.
built, but not entirely built.
Yeah.
They're finishing, sort of, I think it was kind of the central segment that comes down from the pedestrian bridge behind Menards. That's.
Yeah, I can get those answers for you. The road commission's obviously involved, but it's scheduled this summer, so.
And how long, this summer? And how long might it be for the completion of this, you know what I mean?
They're gonna be done in the fall, I think.
No,
Project.
I guess.
Are you talking about this
When should
project?
the eastern segment be done?
So whenever the township authorizes design and figures out how to fund that project, and again, we're just talking about putting on a capital improvement plan tonight, so.
I know that,
But I mean, theoretically, if you were to authorize design this year, it would be a 26 construction. So I'm sorry, 25, next summer. So you're already a year behind
No, I appreciate
the other one. The roundabout is a different animal. That would probably be 3 to 4 years out.
So until then, it would be just a stop sign like it is now.
Yeah, we would talk to the road commission. I don't know if they would ever entertain like a 4-way stop or something there, but it would be just like it is today. But the road commission realized the benefit, and I think they might wanna say, go ahead, we'll permit this, but they might wanna enter into a road improvement agreement with you.
And I think I've asked this before, and it's a bad idea or not advised. Can you put the pathway in to get people off the dirt road while we wait for the dirt road to come in? Or do you need to do the roadway and then the curb and gutter and all that stuff and then the pathway? It doesn't make any sense to try to get people off the dirt road and onto a pathway.
It would just be more money. Cause you would be potentially impacting it. I think you gotta do the road first. I think you gotta build them both at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, there's one other thing. I drove down Stabler, you know, up to Menards from Park. That was a fun I have a truck, so it's really fun. But you get up there and then there's two people walking on the path and they walk in the road to get around the bridge. Now, did we even touch on that? Because that should be in the capital.
That actually is the second
Part
part.
of Trailwoods.
It's part of Trailwoods
Oh, they-
Road Improvement Plan. They have to do that too. They just can't do it at the same time that they're paving the other part. So it's like a two-phase project for Trailwoods.
So they're doing the Stable Road, Park Road intersection and paving part this year. Next year in 25, they'll do the bridge. If the township were to move forward with this project, say in 25, we would just make sure we didn't do them at the same time because people would literally be trapped. So, you know, you could look at doing this the year after that, or you could do it, you know, that's a smaller project. That bridge and that rest of that pathway would be built is probably a month-long endeavor. So you just stagger the projects.
To address your
It'll be
question.
next week, or not next week, next year for
I
the.
think that's the plan. It was always going to follow as a second step of their road improvement plan.
That's
And-
part of their.
And it does include a pedestrian bridge so that people will no longer have to walk in the road to get across the Honey Creek.
And Trailwoods is still not a closed out project. There's still bonds and sureties on hand. There's a lot of punch list items to be taken care of. We're working with the developer to get those taken care of. There's some wood chip pathway that's got some issues. There's some unfinished pathway. And then the road improvement agreements are big. So Trailwoods is very much still kind of in that as they build out mode. And I know the homeowners association has been established, but it's still, the developer's still very much tied into this, and there's still a lot of responsibilities that they have to finalize before we can close that thing out, so.
Just to touch on this question that you raised earlier, telling about prioritization and where this project came from. It's been driven by the Trailwoods project, which originally was called Honey Creek, I think. And the road improvement agreement that they entered into with the Washington County Road Commission back in, I think, 2015. And so the township has always known that this was going to be a problem, that you know, it was a kind of a challenge. Once they did their road improvement, it was going to leave a gap of dirt road between Cedar Ridge and Zeeb. And so when this board, you know, the original members of this board took office in 2020, that sort of reality had been hanging out there, sort of hanging over the township's head for 5 years already at that point. So it's been known that this is coming. The odd thing is that it has taken so long to get here. And part of that is because of permitting issues that Trailwoods ran into with the rerouting of Honey Creek, but that's what's driven this. That's why there was that meeting in 2021 to sort of talk with residents of those subdivisions. The idea at the time, which was from the prior board, was that it would be paid for through an SAD, but that is not how it has to occur. And we've since then gotten some state support for it. We could look for more state support for it, or funding from some other source, but it's a reality that's been coming for almost a decade now.
Yeah, and it's hard to really put a prioritization on it. I mean, if you're trying to say, well, is Zeeb more important or is this more important? They're different. They're very different. They're both pathway related, but really Zeeb Road is really just a pure pathway project, but it's linked to so many funding options that you're limited to until you finish it. So that's kind of a driver, and it really is a huge piece that connects the border to border. Park Road is more of a road project, although it does fulfill a pretty good chunk of east-west trailway. But it's really a quality of life issue and a safety issue for the residents that live there.
It's a safety issue. I mean, I think it's unmarked. Isn't it 55 miles an hour? It defaults to 55 miles an hour. And that's on dirt road. Imagine how fast we can all drive on pavement.
Yeah, then it'll be 65 miles an hour
Well,
unofficially.
Board will slow everybody down.
one of the things the road commission explained to me is that there's multiple safety issues. There's the rerouting of traffic, trying to avoid the dirt road segment going through those two subdivisions. And there's also the people slamming on their brakes or you know, whatever they do in response to the transition from the paved portion to the dirt portion if they continue one way or the other. Plus, there's the I think, a health issue really for the people who live close to it in terms of the amount of particulate that's kicked up from that dirt road by people traveling at 55, 60 miles an hour.
Yeah, so I mean, from a road standpoint, I mean, Jillian, I know I presented at road advisory committee and stuff. There's, I mean, one of the things that we talked about at that committee meeting was the road commission township booklet, the matching funds. There's a lot of other needs in the township. We spent a lot of time talking about private roads and SADs and stuff like that, how to manage that like an asset, but a lot of that group was pretty knowledgeable about just the road commission booklet and kind of leveraging those matching funds that they have. And I know you guys have formed a good relationship with Adam Lape. So the road commission is very involved with Park Road. They've met with Joyce and I and others. I think this is a project where there'll be a partner with you in it. You know, at first it was like, oh, we gotta do this intersection too, and it's a giant project, and that's why we did this study. It was all useful information, but if anything, what I think the study, Scio paying for the preliminary engineering really did was show the road commission that you're serious and that there'll be a partner to you in this. So, I mean, I think everything's negotiable, whether it's the match for the intersection, I mean, even the paving of Park Road. I mean, there might be an opportunity to sit down with them, and I think they're willing to work with you guys. I mean, it is a county road. But it's not a primary county road, but it's still a county road. So I mean, there's different things you can do with them too, to work on this. And, you know, if you were to wait, you're gonna get complaints. There is some safety, but if you were to wait and do this with the roundabout, there's an economy of scale there. But you're talking about pushing this down, you know, 27, 28. And I know you have pretty significant amount of MEDC funds that expire at the end of 25.
That is the similarity with phase 5, is that there, at least, there's a component of funding, significant component of funding from MEDC with the clock, you know, ticking in terms of its expiration.
Yeah, and 800 minus, you know, $705,000 left that's a significant chunk of change. That's half of your project, so. So anyway, that's what I know, but I wanted to make sure that if we talked about park, that the right number was put in the CIP, because I think the last time I heard like a $5-point-some million number, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's everything. Plus roundabout design. Township's not responsible for that.
And so when would we? Okay, we put these projects on the list and we're constrained by the grant as far as the expiration. So when would we talk about the funding options? You know, where would we? Because are we gonna wait till the next budget, or are we gonna have a special meeting just to talk about like, oh, this is where we have the MEDC grant, where are we gonna get the rest of the money? Because the parks I guess it's the Parks and Pathways millage is only gonna cover so much. And if we have all these plans, that only brings in 750,000 a year?
Close to $1 million
A year?
a year.
Okay. So, and then we have Zeeb Road, which is 3 million.
Well, yeah, you have, well, about three, I think you stated 3.2 million, Matt, somewhere around that number for Seed Road. Phase 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going back to my.
Part of that,
Yes.
we have grant funding right now
Okay,
that's still available.
yes.
And then the other part was proposed, when Anna was here, using a portion of the millage through the park fund.
Okay, so if we keep adding more projects, then we'll have the projects on the list and just keep pushing them back until these other big projects that are based on timeline.
Well, if we decide to move forward with, Zeeb Road, it doesn't take up the full annual allocation of park funding. It'll take a portion of it, but not the full amount.
We'll have a presentation from PM Gap that details this, but
Yeah.
basically, I think you can think of it in sort of, without getting into all of the prior grants. You can think about it in sort of 3 different buckets. There's the fund balance for the park fund, which is over $2 million. So that's right now, we have that. We have 1.5 million roughly in MEDC grant funds that is earmarked for phase 5. And we have 1 million coming in each year, and this is a project that's gonna take place over the next 3 years. So some portion of that 1 million coming in, you could earmark that for this project too, if you needed to, but you don't have to because you have enough with the MEDC funds and what's in the fund balance right now.
And you would still have money remaining for other projects.
Okay, because I know that PPP, they're working on other projects in the township, little ones here and there. So that's where I'm kind of trying to wrap my brain around, where are we gonna get all this money? Or is there already enough, but it hasn't been presented, so just asking.
Well, that's sort of the beauty of the capital plan is you get these things on here and every year you're gonna look at them, you're gonna look at the inflation, you're gonna look at construction costs, you're gonna tweak them, but the CIP is really a tool for your committees and your department heads to figure out how you're gonna pay for them. It's not the board's responsibility to figure out how to finance them. It's the committees and the department heads to come to you, present to you how they're gonna fund it.
Okay.
Right?
Sure, let's
But
work.
if members of the board want to work on securing grant funds or state or federal funds, that's great too.
Right, and I mean, I will say one thing about the MEDC earmark money that has been received out of all, and I think I've said this before, sorry, sounding like a broken record, but out of all the different monies that are out there that are in the form of an earmark that you can receive, MEDC is the only one that gives you the money, half the money up front, lets you spend it on preliminary engineering, or construction inspection. It's not linked to NEPA and all these environmental regs and all this red tape. It really is difficult to get the money from the earmarks if it comes through HUD, if it comes through EPA. MEDC is really easy to work with and really good to work with, and you guys are lucky because it gives you a ton of flexibility and ease. Some communities got a couple $1 million for a project and they won't see a dime for another 2 years, and they have to spend $100,000 in professional services to get the money. So the fact that you guys are sitting on this is really a blessing. And I think it gets you at least in a position to do what you've already done. And that's really kind of really dial in on what the true cost is. A lot of the communities are receiving this money and they're flying blind and they're finding out, wow, this is really a lot more expensive, and they're gonna be paying out of pocket for a lot more than what these projects will cost. So anyway, I think you're in good shape. So whether the board decides to move these forward or not, that's another discussion, but I think it's really important to get them on your CIP so you can talk about it and discuss it. So.
Thank you. Matt, do you want to talk about sidewalks then at all related to?
I can, and Sally's still on, and I might have her put up the picture just so if we're talking about it, but I will say we've done, a few hours of work on this. That's about it. I did that one pager, and I can't even say I did it. Stacy put it together for me. And really all it is a conceptual, line on a piece of paper, and an average, unit price that we use to determine this. I feel like, Sally put it up there, 495,000, I believe. And I think that's a very conservative cost. I think that includes contingency and engineering, so.
What would that really be?
Huh?
What would that really be?
What do you mean?
What would that, you said it's very conservative. What would the real estimate likely be?
If you build it right now, today,
Or 24, yeah, late 24 or 25, what would the cost be?
that.
Okay.
I'm saying that just because we haven't done topo. We haven't done all the things that we did on the other projects, so I'm taking worst case. You know, in a perfect world, 20% less.
Okay, all right.
That's about all I'm willing to give you.
No, you said conservative, you know.
Yeah, I just don't want to set you up
I
for,
appreciate that.
but that's really all I know. It's very, very conceptual. And as we do more work, I can dial it in a little tighter. So Z Road that we just spent time talking about, that's 30% design plans. So it's pretty tight, but there's a little contingency built in. Park Road, I would say we're closer to 40-50% plans. That one's dialed in even a little bit tighter. This is like 1% done. So it's very, very conceptual still.
So Matt, have you talked with the road commission about this at all? Because I know you said it's very conceptual, but
We talked to him about where to cross Scio Church, and that's why we crossed it on the west side of the intersection. That was their preference.
so in the
Stop.
past, this had come up in front of the road commission and they said, no way, because of that. See where the pond is there? It has something to do with the pond and then the easement, or that's a retention pond, I believe. But this is in the past, so.
This is just 5-foot sidewalk, and this is just only in the right of way, not on private property.
Right, no, but there was something about that pond, and I don't know what the reason was, but that's why they said no way. This is back in the day. Things have changed possibly, but see, that's where I'm curious that if maybe somebody at the road commission has a history, and maybe it was just that there was a disgruntled employee that said, we're not doing it.
Yeah, I would need to look into that a little bit more. The only thing I could think of is there's a little bit of a ditch there, and if that pond outlets to that ditch, then maybe we're not kind of considering or looking at some drainage pipe improvements, but I don't see how that pond would impact a 5-foot sidewalk. Kensington Woods, one thing I will say is, you know, I heard Jillian, you say at the beginning, like, where did this come from or whatever? The only time OHM's been asked or even talked about this before, when we were asked to put this together, was probably 7 or 8 years ago. When Kensington Woods went in, we made them put sidewalk across their frontage, albeit their frontage is very small. But the planning commission and OHM, when we talked, we said there will be a future sidewalk to connect down. So we're gonna force the developer to put their piece in, so we don't have to in the future. And that's why when we drew the thing, we're connecting to the existing sidewalk. So I do wanna say, like, although I haven't heard about this in a long time, and we put this together, this was talked about back when Kensington Woods went in as part of their development.
Can I ask about, Jillian, I don't want to interrupt you, or Kath, I don't want to interrupt you.
Just quick comment. There is a ditch with drainage issues that you would have to deal with.
Culvert?
Yeah, it's near that tree. I'm sure there is, and that's exactly why my number's a little fluffy. I don't think I have everything in there, so we put some contingency in there to deal with some unknowns.
So the question I have is, how is it that a 76 unit luxury condo gets away with putting a pretty small paving, just a little bit of sidewalk out in front? Like, why weren't they required to just put the sidewalk hooking up to Oak Valley so they could get to the library, to the Pioneer High School? I mean, it's like, I drive it, it's like 0.1 miles. It just seems.
I think, they didn't control that right away. It wasn't their frontage and it wasn't a PUD.
Yeah.
So I don't think.
Correct. Kensington's Woods was not a PUD. It was a straight zone development, so there was no township teeth to have them do anything more than what was required by ordinance and by engineering standard.
Am I right?
There was no public benefit to that project because it was a straight zone.
And that's my next question, is let's say we wanted to bite this off in 2 bites. I think that the most important part is getting people safely across Oak Valley and safely across Scio Church there at the light. Would it make sense to do the eastern part where you go from the Kensington to the Ice Cube? And then at future date, the lower priority would be along the pond?
Yeah, I do, because there's an AATA bus stop there too, and that should be improved probably.
No, but I mean, can you do it in two bites? Like, if this is phase 2, can there be phase 1A, phase 2A, the eastern part to get you safely across the street, and then phase 2B down the road a piece?
Yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't split it up. You could do it in 3 pieces if you wanted to. You could do the part along Upland Drive. You could do the western part of Scio Church on the west side of Kensington and the east side of Kensington. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason how to build it. It's all a matter of the funding and you know, we talked about connecting communities. This is almost like a no-brainer for connecting communities grant. You just can't apply for it right now until ZEEP's finished, so.
So the sooner we finish these.
Splitting it up may increase your overall cost just for quantity of scale.
Right.
But you could definitely split it up into 3 separate contracts. You just may see it go higher than that
Right.
$5,000 or 500,000.
Yeah, and it looks like there's in the smaller picture, that would be on the south side. It looks, by Oak Valley Drive. One side is Lodi, the other side is Pittsfield.
And we'd have to talk with them before we could do that portion of the project.
It's in the right of way.
Well, why can't they do that portion?
So,
And that brings up what I was gonna say. I was talking to the supervisor of Lodi Township about a month ago on another issue. And I mentioned to her that there is interest in exploring sidewalk on Scio Church Road. She said there's someone on her board. Did I tell you this? I told somebody. I don't remember who I told.
don't tell us.
Okay, so she said that there's a board member interested in sidewalk issues, walkability, connections, and that there would be interest in exploring that with Scio Township.
The other party you could talk to is the road commission, if they're ever planning on doing anything to that signal at the intersection there, they would need to improve that intersection and potentially help with the ramps and stuff. So I wouldn't say I don't think the road commission is gonna necessarily pay for the sidewalk, but you would wanna know
The approach.
what they're doing, so then they can help put the push buttons in. So there's some cost saves or collaboration, cost savings potential there too, if you're talking to them. And again, letting them know what your needs are too are really important. They're going to Watts, they have access to the safety grant monies. Brent, if you talk to Brent Schlack or any of those guys over there, Aaron or whoever, they can work with you. So I mean, as part of your, if you're meeting with them monthly or whatever, letting them know, having a capital improvement plan published so they can read it and say, hey, we can help with that. Or you can ask them, can you help us with this? And a lot of times when you especially when you're taking 2 government or 3 government agencies and combining it, it's like a no-brainer for a grant. So it's really gonna help leverage. So there's a lot of opportunities with this one. I see this as pretty, compared to the last 2 projects we talked about, this one's a piece of cake. It's just finding the funding for it. And again, personally, probably belongs on the capital improvement plan. I don't know the priority of it, but might as well put it on there so you can seek funding. So. But, in terms of priority, I mean, I don't live there and I do see people walking along that stretch. So I mean, whenever you see people walking along it, you always think about people with disabilities. And then the big thing is when you see an AATA bus stop, the ride will sometimes also help out. A lot of times, like in Ipsy, we'll do a lot of bus pads and make them shelter ready, and they'll come out and put the shelter on, if it warrants enough traffic. I don't know if this one does or not, but
Where would the bus stop go here? Cause it's on the 26 and the 29 route. Is that a proposed or are those existing?
They're existing, look at the
Yeah, I see, okay.
bus stop.
So you're not talking about new ones, you're talking,
No, but they'll put a AATA as 2 different specs for pads that basically are built so they're shelter ready in the future. They'll drop those shelters down. And they're really good to work with. If you ever sit down and talk to them, they have no problem, coordinating with you, and they sometimes will help.
We learned from the recent work prior to putting the village renewal on is that the AATA has some requirement for some of these bus pad improvements that they be connected to a sidewalk, that there be an adjacent sidewalk. So
Yeah.
in some ways, it's sort of linked, the sidewalk improvement to the bus stop improvement.
Yeah, and based on ridership, and sometimes it's directional. One way is not high ridership, the other way is high ridership, and they'll say, this needs to be a 10-foot by 15-foot pad, or this one could be smaller, or this one can be dirt, Doesn't necessarily always have to be paved, but the linkage to the sidewalk's huge. I mean,
what do you mean?
having a bus stop linked by sidewalk is an important accessibility issue.
For safety?
For
That's
ADA.
fine. Okay.
So, which would be Wagner and Dexter and Arbor
I
Road.
was
They
gonna-
did not have sidewalks whatsoever.
I'm gonna. So I don't have any more questions about this. Sounds like it's something we should add to the plan. And I want to, unless someone else has questions, can we segue to trustee Carey's,
Well, actually, I have an idea. So why can't we talk with Lodi and Pittsfield and maybe get the sidewalk on the other side? You know, across their uplands, across.
I asked about that and Matt said that they were road.
Well, so the road commission would prefer to cross people, and I would, as an engineer, agree, crossing people at a signal is the safest way. So they wouldn't wanna have people cross Scio Church at Upland Drive, that's not signal controlled. So putting a sidewalk on the south side and really, you're not really promoting them to cross at a signal.
Do you know, if you don't know,
Probably
Do
be better
Pittsfield-
to signal there.
do Pittsfield and Lodi have connecting community bank opportunities, grant opportunities, so to speak?
Lodi probably does. I don't know if Pittsfield does, but Carlisle's their planner, you could ask, or just call them up, they'll know. I'm pretty sure Pittsfield probably is a community large enough that they, I'm sure, leverage that as many times as possible. I mean, there's a lot of pathways, a lot of.
I'm
pathways.
thinking this screams out as something should be done for safety concerns and also for regional funding and joint grant opportunities.
Makes sense to me.
I agree. The parcel on Oak Valley Drive and Scio Church was recently rezoned to light industrial. That was why I was talking with the supervisor at
Lodi.
Where?
Lodi, across the street where the big barn is.
in Scio Church,
Okay.
right on the corner there.
So they can
That
have their-
parcel was-
Party barn?
To develop,
No, it's not gonna be a party barn.
they do push for it just so they can get us back, but, no, but, see, that's what I was thinking. They're gonna rezone that industrial and then have the developer in Lodi put the sidewalk in.
It doesn't,
No?
so there are issues with the parcel.
Oh, okay.
If if we're done with Park and Zeeb, I could probably let Sally and Mark have their evening back if you want.
Oh, sure, yeah, thank you,
And
Sally.
But I'm not going anywhere.
And do you have GIS?
Thank you all.
Thanks, folks. Thanks,
Thank
folks.
you.
Great to be here. And there's been a gentleman, bus rider, Wagner and Dexter. Am I getting it right, Jim?
Yeah.
There's many people over there. He's just the one that's waiting.
But no, I'm not trying to minimize I'm trying to say there's a gentleman who's been pressing for that in that area, so. Do you
Wagner
have?
and Dexter
Dexter and
in Arbor,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, as Wagner goes north into it and crosses the freeway and.
There's a bus route that comes both directions through that intersection.
There's two stops and you have to
They
walk
kinda
the
get
road to get.
dumped off and it's, are there some things by way of the capital improvement plan that we could do to accommodate bus ridership there and the people who take that form of transport?
Yeah, and
And that's why I mean, if you got a
because
GIS.
out of Brandon's utility district, I'm a little foggy on where there's sidewalk. I don't think there's much of any sidewalk up there at all, so.
Until you get across the bridge in Ann Arbor,
Right.
so.
Yeah. I mean, there, of course, obviously having walkable sidewalk in the right of way is something that would help, make it easier and safer. You're also looking at, okay, now who's gonna maintain that? Who's gonna make sure it's shoveled? Who's gonna make sure it's, it's not a pathway per se like Zeeb Road, but it's sidewalk. And it's still something that the road commission, although they permit it, they don't own it and they don't maintain it. So you're taking on those assets. So, but if there's a need, there's a need, so.
And that's true for any sidewalk, right? That's not within a neighborhood. And maybe in the future, we could have OHM
Let's take a look at it.
Yeah.
do a
we can do that.
preliminary
get back to
Yeah,
you.
what, another one of these $500 jobs for that.
So there's sidewalk transition plans that communities will invest in. A lot of times it's ADA based, but a lot of times like. I'll pick on Ipsy again, but Ipsy City. You know, there's ADA ramp and ADA transition plans where. There's a lot of ramps and things that weren't built ADA compliant. The rules have changed. There's been lawsuits. And so they have spent money to put together. Just a true sidewalk transition plan that identifies all their issues. And it basically puts it in a 20-year period and says, we're gonna spend this much, and they do a sidewalk program almost annually. It's also a maintenance plan, so they're taking care of trip hazards, where roots push up on it. But it also identifies gaps. And areas where bus routes are, where there's no accessibility. So that's something where, you know, maybe I don't know if what committee group this would fall under, but it's something that you guys could look at as where's there sidewalk gaps. I also think it is very important if this is, you know, in dense areas. And we do a good job with this in Scio, is anywhere where a developer's building, we make them do sidewalk across their frontage. Even if it's a sidewalk to nowhere, because eventually somebody's gonna wanna link up to it. So, you know, Jackson Road's a bad example because there's sidewalk all up and down it, but the DDA invested in it.
Kensington on Scio Church, there's a sidewalk there that we required that goes, you know, doesn't touch any other sidewalks.
Yep, or Parkland Plaza, which the township did spend money on Parkland Plaza sidewalk. As developments went in front of there, we made them put sidewalk in and then we didn't have to do the whole thing. But Parkland Plaza was a great example of, you got a lot of people, a lot of vocal neighbors that came that were walking in the road. It was unsafe. And then I think that was funded through DDA and some other
Parks and Pathways Village. funds
Yeah,
paid
but I mean,
for part of it.
that was a gap and there's a lot of people that use that, so.
So Matt, you just said something that I have been bringing up, and so has the road advisory committee. We, as a township, we don't know where sidewalks fall under. Because we've heard that, no, it should be under roads, no, it should be under parks and pathways. So this is something that we need to have a conversation and, you know, figure out where it goes, because if not, it's just gonna be scrambling for funding or whatever. And we have a road advisory committee and we're working on the next round of funding. And if sidewalks would be funded under that, we need to make sure we include it, but we have to figure it out.
So shall we move on to? Are there other questions about anything else on the CIP?
No, thank you for your aspect of it. I know we have Brandon here, and he's CIP too. Are you here for CIP?
To answer questions?
Anybody has my?
No, but does anyone have questions for him?
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
I don't.
Thank you, Matt.
Or-
Thank you very much.
So Brandon,
She's gonna be here.
Yeah.
Brandon did a good job with his, but he has a little bit more money to play with, sort of.
What did you ask, John? Something of me?
Nothing. I don't think I did.
You look like you were looking at my.
No, I was looking at it, but I didn't.
Oh, no questions for me?
I don't think so.
No, we just wanted you to stay late afterwards.
So is it okay for Brandon to
I
leave?
think so.
And I've already asked him
Yeah, so,
privately my question.
yeah.
Yeah, thank
Thank you, Brandon.
Were there any
Guys,
questions that Jessica asked in her memo?
Yeah, not yet. Hold on.
Yeah,
Let's make sure. All right.
Because about whether they should be
It
kept.
says in Fund 591 Water Fund, it is surprising that there are no items planned for fiscal year 27 forward. Is this correct?
27 forward.
Right, so after fiscal year ending 27, there's no items listed for the water fund, Fund 591? Got a question for you?
Wait a minute.
Did you want to look at this?
Yeah, but
Yeah. Yeah, I see where she's talking
You may not have it.
It's the very first block at the top.
Up at the top, oh yeah, 591, yeah. So it looks like your 6-year plan ends in the second year.
But keep in mind too, you know, as we move forward with the budgeting process every year, we will reevaluate the plan.
Have you got?
Yeah, some of it got split up into, like, if you look at the next one down, the water meter replacement, because it was split between water and sewer. You can see some of the money is drawn out till 28, 29. So it was just those specific water plans that aren't being shared. Don't extend out, which
Brandon, if I can
is
as well.
correct, is correct.
There's some CIP projects that are in the 20-year CIP. That did not make this cut because they're development based and growth based. So until we see things that trigger that, they won't be on a short-term CIP. We do have to do what's called a water reliability study for Eagle. That needs to be refreshed every 5 years, and those are included in that report. And that's really when we reevaluate like the short-term projects that need to be done. But there are some longer-term projects that just aren't on here yet. So there may be a gap where we're not doing too many water projects right now. But we do reevaluate it on a regular basis, and they will come back up as the township continues to grow more.
Okay.
Yep, this definitely looks correct.
Great. I mean, I guess.
Are there other questions?
One more, just a general question that Jessica had. She says that there are some items included that may not be capital in nature and need not be included, and that's several different funds. Joyce, is this something you could answer? It's number one.
Number one,
On Jennifer's numbers.
oh, okay,
Do you want to copy, John?
yeah, I don't.
I printed it out,
Yeah.
but
Well, these are,
Show it to Joyce.
yeah, I remember this being brought up before. It had to do with studies and also, what was the other? Cleaning,
That's right.
but it is more like a place marker to keep track, but not,
I don't know, that's fine.
yeah, and he
Yeah.
asked, but, so,
I mean, there is a threshold on the dollar amount, not necessarily being considered for capital purposes. So I'm not sure exactly which item she's referring to, but I can get back with her. Okay, yes.
Doesn't really hurt if you say.
No.
Yeah.
Consent, no. Okay.
Okay. Well, if we exhausted the questions, and I think we've gone through most of the questions on Jessica's memo. I mean, some of them are less questions than sort of statements, but are we ready to maybe modify the draft resolution that we have to incorporate some of the changes, the additions that we've talked about this evening?
I mean, I would, I don't know if we do this through a formal motion or if we just agree to do that, you know, by consensus. I don't know how I've not been to one of these capital improvement plan meetings before, and it sounds like
nobody else has.
none of us have in recent history.
Yeah.
So, I don't, what's the will of the?
Joyce,
No, I was just gonna reference that, you know, in the resolution, it's not broken out by projects. The projects are included on the spreadsheet. I think if you're interested in adding projects to the list, you know, as part of the adoption of the resolution, I would include those that are not included.
So to
In the
update the list
resolution?
and then adopt the resolution?
Well, you could reference changes, the additions that you're referring to.
So the
in the
motion,
resolution, is that what you're saying?
well, no, I think what makes sense is to have a motion to adopt the resolution with the following changes.
As additions
as
to the
additions
capital
to the-
improvement plan.
Yes, exactly.
Because you didn't take anything out, but I think Park Road is not included. Zeb Road is included.
Yeah, Zebra doesn't need to be
Yeah, so it's
referenced,
Park
but
Road that's not included, nor is the sidewalk.
You know,
Church.
Scio Church.
there's one other thing that I wanted to mention. Chief Hood left.
He should be.
I think
back.
it's just in the
I think
hall.
he just went out.
He'll be
Oh,
back.
okay. So after the last LASA meeting, John Kingsley, the supervisor from Webster Township, I wanted to speak with him, and they just built a new fire station in 2021 or 22. So I asked him how they funded that, and because they do have a millage as well. So they have been planning for 15 years and taking $100,000 to $200,000. Oh, yeah. Oh.
You're talking about fire.
Yes. He
This is
sneaks
what-
out and sneaks back in.
Murphy's Law that he would step out of the room and. Exactly.
Yeah, because I want to make sure we go over, so anyways, he said that Webster has been planning for 15 years. And every year they would take $100,000 or $200,000 out of the general fund and put it into their fire department for the station, because they knew they were gonna need one and build one. And so then they get to the 15-year mark, new board members come in, and it was put on hold because they needed to educate themselves. So anyways, they were able to fully fund it by planning and putting money aside. Now, that's a long time, and they have been planning. Their millage is only for operations. They own the building, and then they are part of the Dexter Area Fire Authority. So that's what the operations, and I believe do you know what their millage rate is? 2.4 just for operations. Okay. So anyways, I was thinking about this, and we have a healthy general fund, not that I want to keep dipping into it, but the township owns the buildings. So why not take about $100,000 every year and put it into the capital improvement fund for the fire station alone? And then that shows residents that we're planning, at least planning towards that. Now, I know that would be part of the budget, and of course, this came up last week, April 1st was our meeting, but then that, and then when we'd also go for grants and millages and whatever. Any way we can get money, but
It's an interesting idea.
Do you want to respond?
Our
Chief?
needs might be more immediate than that.
oh, absolutely, but we should have been planning years ago,
And it
but
would take
this is where we are now.
$100,000 a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it would be,
Yeah, you'd have to do more than.
I know that.
But
but it's
know that-
still money that would be earmarked for whatever we need.
I know that I've had conversations or been privy to conversations where the chief has explained the desire to create such a capital fund. So maybe you have a response to that.
Absolutely. I think that's definitely a worthwhile project. And quite honestly, I wish the board would have started it 20 years ago. We would be in the place we're in. I think that that's an absolutely accurate statement of how our planning or lack thereof has put us in a position where we have a huge capital need today that we don't have funds for.
But to add additional comment on your suggestion, I think that there's opportunities outside of the township as well. With Representative Peters, we submitted an application for capital improvements as far as the second fire station. And I believe there is some potential for us to get those dollars, which would be, a big boost if we could get those dollars. And then we've spent quite a bit of time in Lansing with our legislators, really speaking to the apparatus as far as the equipment that we might need, as far as the engine, the ladder truck, and potentially maybe at some point we could get funding to assist with the second fire station there too. I think if we're able to chip away at reducing that amount, if in fact the township decide to go out again, and I think there's a commitment to do that, perhaps we don't have to ask for as much in terms of a millage,
Yes.
which might be something more responsive to the voters.
And the calendar is gonna help,
Yeah.
the sale of the calendar.
Calendar.
I think that was a fire calendar, but.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did you have anything to add? Chief?
No, I Yeah, I'd agree with the manager. We're looking at every avenue to bring in outside funding to help with these projects. And just doing a rough total in my head, we're asking our senator for about $3.5 million. We're asking our state legislature for $1.5 million roughly, and $1 million through FEMA grants. So and these are not given dollars. These are competitive grants that we may or may not get, but
We're trying.
yeah, we're doing what we can.
Jillian, were you suggesting that we add a savings towards fire to
Well,
the CIP?
there is, there,
I don't know, I'm looking at where.
yeah, down it says second fire, and so there's a lump estimated cost of $11,000. 11 million.
It's a very small fire.
Right.
Model.
And then in 2026-27, it's 11 million. And then, oh, that's a building and land, but you know, and of course, I'm assuming that 11 million in a couple of years, we're hoping that the grants and the other funding comes through, then we can. But I think that if we're showing that we're serious, and here we already, you know, and a lot of times we get, and I think this is what I heard before, that we are turned down from grants or have been because we're a wealthy community. Is
I have that perception, yes.
okay, so we can just try it, anything, but yeah, there, we already have the fund. We just don't have the money in the fund.
It needs to be a budgeted item.
Yeah, budgeted, of
Not
course, and this
CIP.
is the capital, right?
Okay.
So, John, it seemed like you were sort of headed towards making a motion. I know you've written something out with regard to the sidewalk.
I brought a motion that I would move, that the Scio Township 2022 to 2028 capital improvement plan include the engineering and construction of a non-motorized pathway and crosswalks alongside Scio Church, which will connect up and drive to Oak Valley Drive. That would be my motion. I'm not saying it's this year or next year or whatever. I just wanted to get it on the plan. That's what I want to do, so that I can, when I go to Watts, when I talk to Rep. Braybeck, when I talk to people, I can say, hey, we've got this idea for a regional connection. It's in our capital improvement plan. What do you suggest we do? So I'm trying to.
So, wait a minute. Oh,
Because I'm on the Watts membership.
When you're on the Radex committee.
No, but I know her personally.
okay, but I have a question. So if we go to Brayback for a sidewalk money, but then we need money for our fire department, which is really important, are they gonna say, well, you've already got money for sidewalks and forget about the fire?
I'm not trying to do something at the expense of the fire department. There are pots of money that Matt was talking to about with respect to regional connecting communities.
Right, but no, I'm talking about going to Brayback now, because they're.
It was just, it's just
in her district. Lodi is her
Yeah,
district.
that's not the point. The point is if we ask
That
her
was an
for,
example, by the way.
yeah, if we ask her for money for sidewalks and then we go and ask her for fire, are they gonna say no to one or the other? Because, oh, you're already getting this,
I
you've
could
already got.
ask her that. I don't have any specific plans to talk to her. I'm talking about brainstorming and being creative.
Totally not getting what I'm saying, but I'm asking you a question, if that's going to go against us, if we're going to Brayback and
know.
asking.
I would
okay.
ask her that if I talked to her.
So Jillian, I can respond to that
Oh,
because
okay.
when we were up in Lansing, we were talking about the fire department capital needs. We also talked about the sidewalk. We made it very clear that the fire department capital needs come first.
I agree.
And there's no, we didn't want any confusion about that.
Okay, good.
But we did want her to be aware that there's this other project that we're also thinking about that's right in her district. Because that's the portion of Scio Township that she is part of her district, but she also represents those other areas that it would connect to.
Okay, Park Road, whose district is that?
That's in Carrie Ryan's
Okay.
district.
Yeah, we should be talking to her about Park Road.
Well, yes, and most of Scio Township is in Representative Ryan's district.
As should GCSI.
Right. We are talking to all of the representatives. Actually, there's a little corner of Scio Township that's represented by Representative Conlon as well.
Could we have regular reports when you go and talk with these people? Because it's kind of bit piecemeal as far as the information we get.
The conversations are kind of piecemeal too.
Right, but you can have a line item in your report saying, this is what we did. this is
Well,
what we
Kathy
did."
and I are the sort of delegates to GCSI, and we have been trying to keep people abreast of what we've been talking about with them. But it's basically an ongoing conversation, trying to talk with the representatives about the fire department's capital needs. That's what the conversation has been for the past probably year.
Her
So,
comment is a good one, though. I mean, it has been primarily you. It would be helpful if you give us some reports on it.
okay, well, I will promise to give a report, an update on the efforts to get secure funding from the state and the federal government for the fire department's capital needs. I'll try and get that for our next regular meeting.
Next week.
I know,
So,
with everything else.
so,
You're it's all a hypothetical that John was just sort of throwing out there, so it's not like there's some effort right now that would interfere with that effort to get fire department capital needs met.
so shouldn't we include Park Road and also Dexter and our?
Well, what I think makes sense is why don't we do it a motion at a time for each of these, and then that way we can vote them on to the list.
Okay.
And then we can adopt a resolution that adopts the plan.
Oh, right.
The amendment.
And there's a mistake in the resolution.
Wait, can we deal with that?
Yeah, why don't we deal with that when we get to the resolution, but
Okay.
hold that thought. So, do we have a motion by Riser? Is there support? Support by Noel. Unless there's further discussion, could we please call the roll? Starting with Riser.
Riser,
Yes.
no,
Yes.
Carrie,
This is just for the capital improvement plan itself, yes.
no, it's
No,
not,
this
it's
is adding-
adding just.
Oh, adding, yes.
To add the Scio Church Road sidewalk, Carrie,
Yeah.
yes. And Hathaway,
Yes,
motion passes.
so, John, would you like to make another motion, similar motion?
Yes, I would move, that the Scio Township 2022 to 2028 capital improvement plan include the engineering and construction of the Park Road paving between, help me out, Cedar Bend and
Cedar
Ridge.
Cedar Ridge.
Drive.
Cedar Ridge Drive and Zeeb Road and adjacent pathway and sewer improvements.
Storm sewer.
Storm sewer improvements.
Adjacent pathway and storm sewer.
Improvements, that's right.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So moved by Riser, support by Noel. Please call the roll.
Riser,
Yes.
no,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yeah.
Hathaway,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you. And I think we also, if unless you want to make the motion, we could
Could
do
you
a
write it
similar
up?
motion for including the potential improvements to the Wagner Dexter intersection, pedestrian safety improvements, I guess.
Yeah, I mean.
Dexter Ann Arbor Road.
Yeah, I have it up on the GIS system, but I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just gonna ask the question. I believe we talked about it earlier and it was suggested that maybe we authorize OHM to put together some preliminary
Right,
information and then from there we can decide
Add
to
it.
add it or not. We just don't
Yeah.
know at this point what, you
Well,
know.
then, I don't know if we can take action on it if it's not directly related to the CIP.
I'm I am gonna move that the township, and it doesn't have to be now, if it's out of order, but I will move that the township procure the services of OHM to investigate a
Yes, a
preliminary
review.
review
And bring
of,
that back.
of the bus stop and pathway at the intersection of Wagner and Dexter Ann Arbor. That's what I'm going to do when it's appropriate to do that.
Well, why not put it in here? Because we have things in here that are studied.
Yeah, I was gonna say, go ahead and put it in there. Because most of these, we're gonna be taking action on of some kind or another at a future meeting, authorizing engineering or something like that. We could do the same thing for this. I think it's worth just putting it on the plan.
Yeah, that way it doesn't get lost.
I'm willing.
And I'm not just saying that because it's in my neighborhood.
All right, and I'm gonna need the language.
I know.
One more time. I've got, request OHM to investigate preliminary.
Well, I don't know, that might not be what this body wants to do. This body might first want to move that the Scio Township 2022 to 2028 capital improvement plan, include the, what I want to say, preliminary review by OHM of sidewalk and bus stop improvements at the intersection of Wagner Road and Dexter Ann Arbor Road. Is that friendly to this body?
Does that sound right, Matt? Is that what we want?
Well, and I'm trying to think about the process. I mean, because I think what y'all want is to add it to the capital improvement plan.
But feasibility too.
But you probably want a conceptual estimate drafted by us. You know, we haven't provided a proposal, but this would be something that would be, you know.
Conceptual.
Well, for example, we spent like $500 to put the Scio Ridge one together. So it would probably be, you know, something that could be done under general services or something under that board authorized threshold that, you know, I could give you a quote, you could authorize it, and I could put together a one sheeter like that. Because you don't want to add it to the capital without a cost, right?
I think we could add it to the capital plan as a project. And then we could decide what action to take to move towards a completion of that project or not.
I mean, I think you're fine, depending on the timing of everything. I mean, I think you're pretty safe just to put it down and put a pretty rough number, like 50 to 75,000 or even $100,000 down for now. And then when you're serious about investigating it, you would come to me and ask me for a proposal to do something. But right now, I mean, if we're talking about a couple hundred feet of sidewalk and a bus pad or a bus stop and some ramps and stuff, I mean, you're probably talking in the range of 0 to 250,000. Like without me even putting any effort into it.
Do we change, when we get new information about projects that are on the capital improvement plan, we don't bring it back to a vote for the board every time we get new information about the figures, we just change the figures, but they're projects that are on the capital improvement plan, right? So.
Well, there are projects included, but the numbers are based on estimates in most cases. It's not, you know, something.
So
you
do
just
we need
pull out of the air. That's
Do we
why.
need a plug figure of like $100,000?
Well, he's saying from 0 to 250.
Well, it's probably.
I mean, I don't know the intersection. With very little effort, I could give you a quicker estimate.
Not tonight, though.
Or, you know.
May pull a rabbit out of my head.
So what's the goal? What's the goal though? What
I think.
is it connected a sidewalk down to Jackson or to the bridge or?
Yeah, that's what they talked about is the bridge going towards Ann Arbor. And then the bus stops. There's one bus stop by Elizabeth, and then where's the other one?
On the other side of the street,
And,
basically right across the street,
but on
on that.
on Dexter Ann Arbor,
The
right?
vacant parcel.
Yeah,
Not down Wagner, down Dexter Ann Arbor.
well-
No, I think both the bus stops are on Wagner. So one is coming, you know, just after the bus turns off of Dexter Ann Arbor Road and is heading south on Wagner. There's a bus stop there. And I think there's a bus stop on the other side of the street going when the bus comes back going the other direction.
Okay.
yeah, it's like they just put a sign, stuck it in there and said,
Yeah.
good luck.
I mean, I think in you know, a few hours of effort, I could put together a little map and a dollar amount for conceptual but I don't wanna be put on this.
Can we put it
But-
on the capital improvement plan as an item and then add those details later?
Well, we could put it on and maybe look at $2,000 for preliminary engineering.
Probably be less than that.
Yeah, just a number.
Earmark 1,000, just in case, and then at least we have a number there.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, $1,000 plenty, just for doing a high level.
In case you get lost.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's fine. And we can email, I mean, even with these being added tonight, even Park Road, somebody's gonna come back and ask
We're gonna sit down.
for us to look at it and put it together. So this could be done as part of that. So.
We're ready to read that back.
So we're really just adding this as an item to the capital improvement.
Right.
Okay, so what I've got is, the third motion is, that the Scio Township CIP include preliminary review by OHM of sidewalk and bus stop improvements at the intersection of Dexter and Arbor and Wagner Roads.
Is that clear?
Well, I would say take out the preliminary and just call it a project.
For review?
Or
No,
just like the other ones, just say
okay.
a
Well, the
capital
other ones said
improvement
things
project,
like-
including the engineering and construction of pedestrian safety improvements at that intersection.
Matt used the word preliminary.
Well, that's because we don't have anything right now. We have something for the others.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
what's
that's
preliminary
what I'm saying.
Okay, all
Just
right.
Yeah.
just
If
have
you're
it
comfortable,
down.
if you're comfortable with it, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
So then, Scio Township CIP include preliminary review by OHM of sidewalk and bus stop improvements at the intersection of Dexter and Arbor and Wagner Roads.
Thank you.
That's the motion that
Riser,
Riser made.
Riser.
Support by Gary.
Sure. Oh,
All those in.
okay.
Alrighty, motion number 3 is stated, Riser,
Yes.
Noel? Yes. Carrie?
Yes.
Hathaway?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Now we're ready to, I think, unless there's further additions or changes to the capital improvement plan, we're ready to move on.
Carrie wanted to, improve the resolution itself.
Right, exactly, that's what I'm
But
saying.
did Chief,
Sorry.
Chief, did you have anything else? You're good? Okay.
Chief,
Okay.
he's here for the next agenda item.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, unless there's other questions about our capital planning, and to answer those questions as well.
Love talking about capital improvement.
So the second whereas says the Scio Township Code of Ordinance, section 2-115, capital improvement programs require the Township Board of Trustees to annually accept a capital improvement plan. So I pulled it and I also looked at statute and I have read this, unless my eyes are crossing, but I don't see where it says annual.
It doesn't. The statute says annual, but our ordinance does.
Where does it say in the statute?
MCL 125.3865.
Mhm.
I can pull it up and
I have it right here, but I just need which, and again, I've been reading a lot.
No, that's all right, I can help.
Where's the annual? In here?
MCL 128 what?
Um,
3165.
okay, good. So 125 dash, or, dot 3865, this is Act 33 of 2008. So, we just need to remove the,
Reference to the code.
yeah, so we,
So, state statute, MCL 125.3865, requires, capital, let's see, capital improvements program to. Sorry, somebody else.
oh, okay, no, you're right. The rest of it's right.
Rest
Requires,
of the font, it is okay.
Yeah, it's just the reference should be to the statute, not the ordinance.
I think technically it might require the planning commission, but it says, or, well,
oh,
I don't mind.
no,
Are we gonna substitute?
MCL.
what do you mean the planning commission? The only thing the planning commission, they don't, we approve the capital improvement. But we could have had them do it, but we chose in our ordinance. And but it does make reference up at the top, Act 285, no. Yeah, but if you keep reading,
They can do it.
unless the planning, no, they
Unless
can't
the
do
board
it.
wants-
The board has already approved this, that the board
I meant the opposite delegate. They can do it themselves.
Okay, but then go to the first section here, the Municipal Planning Act, Act 285. But is that different than Michigan Planning Enabling Act of Act 33 of 2008? Was that rescinded or repealed and then replaced?
You know, this is just a whereas clause. One option is to, if there's any confusion, is just to delete it because it has no bearing. It's just meant as background, and if there's,
Take that
we
reference
can just
out.
delete the whole thing.
The capital improvement program requires the Board of Trustees.
How about this? Let's just remove that first not the first whereas, but the Municipal Planning Act. And then as amended grants, and then it's the Scio Township Board powers to annually accept a capital improvement plan, because that is actually correct.
So the first whereas is correct.
Well, except for the Municipal Planning Act, Act 285. I believe that's been repealed. But we could. I mean, we have a lot of issues with resolutions not having correct detail. And down the road, we're gonna have people look at it and it's not gonna make sense. And then I don't know what the outcome is of that. But,
So what would you like to do to the first
okay,
whereas?
so it would just say, whereas the Scio Township Board annually accepts a capital improvement plan for the benefit. So,
Okay. Whereas the Scio Township Board annually accepts a capital improvement plan for the benefit of the health, safety, and welfare of the community, as those criteria relate to the physical development of Scio Township. That's not good?
Then what do you
And-
want to do with the second whereas?
Yeah.
actually, we could just remove that one, right? Because it's
Yes,
kind of
that's what-
redundant, right?
You could also get rid of the word annually, but, because but,
How about biannually?
no, but my point is, our ordinance doesn't require an annual, it just requires us to do it, or we could strike it
Well,
out.
we need to keep it in because I think this is the first capital improvement plan we've had in 20 years, or I don't know how long it's been. But by law, we should be,
Let's leave in the annually
Annually.
first whereas clause and delete the second whereas clause, and then I think, are we good to go?
we don't need to reference the act.
I don't think so. I mean,
Okay.
but you can, but whereas clauses have no binding effect. It's the resolve clauses that really matter.
I think if you get rid of the
Okay.
word annually in the second whereas, it'll be good, because our ordinance doesn't require the annual. The annual we have to do because the state law says we gotta do it. Our ordinance also prescribes things, so
Oh, you wanna leave the second one in, but just strike the word annually?
I would propose that, but if you wanna strike the entire thing, I'm gonna go with whatever.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So instead of, just from that second paragraph.
Let's strike the whole thing rather than
Okay.
wordsmithing this.
Yeah, and one other thing I just need to mention in this, I sent this to everybody on the board. But this is a really important point, and I showed it to Joyce earlier.
Is the article that you sent out?
Yeah, so we have to, it is in this, 125.3. The Planning Enabling Act prohibits a township with an approved master plan from constructing or authorizing for construction in an area covered by the master plan, a street, square, park, playground, public way, ground, or other open space or public building or other structure unless the township board first submits the proposed public improvement to the planning commission for approval of the location, character, and extent of the proposed public improvement. So we have to be cognizant of that whatever we just, because they've approved the master plan, we approve the capital improvement plan, but whatever we plan, like the township park, that has to go in front of the planning commission.
Important point.
The board can choose to approve the master plan.
Yes, we can do that too, but the last time we,
So could I
It was
move the-
never presented, I'm not saying that, it was never presented to the board for acceptance. How about that?
So
I
let's
move-
move on.
I move the model motion, with the additions that have been, I think, friendly to this body.
Well, I don't think we have actually a model motion.
I mean, the
Move
model, I
adoption-
moved the
Adoption of the
resolution.
resolution.
I meant resolution, my apologies.
The resolution as amended,
Yes, right.
right, offered by Riser, support by, oh, sorry.
Support by Noel.
support by- And, all right, I'll call them all.
Thank you.
Riser,
Yes.
no,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
motion passes.
Great, good work, team. Thank you,
Yeah,
Matt.
It was one of our.
Thank you, Matt, for
Thank you.
slogging it
And
out.
I don't know if we still have folks from PM Gap here or not, but I think they were on too, weren't they?
Ally was online.
I mean, she may have.
She can
may-
probably give.
She's still here, can she go?
Yes.
She can go. Tell us.
Thank you, Ally.
Good evening. See you later, Matt.
Night.
So now we are moving on to the second item under new business. This is the authorization for fire chief to execute memorandum of understanding.
And I would move to authorize the.
Oh, no, it's an MOA. What's an MOA?
Memorandum of understanding.
Oh, it is.
MOU. MOU.
I would move to authorize the manager, fire chief, and labor council to negotiate and the chief to execute a memorandum of understanding with the International Association of Firefighters Local 4891, agreeing to a mutually acceptable one-time deviation from Article 10 of the agreement between the township and Local 4891.
Is there support? So moved by Riser, support by Noel. Are there any further questions for the chief before we vote? No? Well, thank you. Please call the roll.
You want me to call the roll on that one? Okay.
Yes.
Riser,
Yes.
Noel,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yeah.
Kathleen,
Yes,
very good. Motion passes.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Anthony.
That brings us to public comment. This is a time for members of the public to speak for up to 3 minutes on any matter under the purview of the Board of Trustees. Trustee Riser, will you serve as our timekeeper, please?
Yes.
Oh,
Ready?
yes.
Hi, Kathleen Brandt. Regarding the capital improvement plan, may I please ask that that is stored somewhere on the Scio webpage? It's difficult to find the previous one. And and the way it is presented as a number of attachments, it's kind of hard to find it in meeting minutes, so could ask for that to be inserted in the webpage someplace?
The perfect person is here.
And then this is like my last chance to ask this. So, Mr. Hathaway, you have said you're not running for supervisor. You have never said that you are not running for other office. So one must assume that you are, since you choose not to respond to that question. Would you like to set the record straight for residents?
Well, I don't know that I've been, I know that you raised this question before and I was sort of puzzled by it. I have no plans at this time to run for office. I'm not, I know filing deadline is a week from now and I'm not planning to take any actions to run for office in Scio Township.
That's perfect. Thank you. I heard a rumor that you were running for dog catcher.
Only because I'm running that.
Thanks, that's all I have.
I did run as a cat catcher a week ago, but.
Actually, if the county didn't have an animal control officer, the supervisor has to count each dog in the township annually.
I saw that. That cracked me up.
Isn't that crazy?
Cracked me up, yep.
You still have more time.
Start at Kathy's house.
So is there anyone participating remotely who would like to comment?
Anyone online who would like to, let's see, it's Rob Pattinson. Rob, you can go ahead.
Thank you. I just have one question.
Go ahead, Rob.
I'll wait.
Are you buying?
What are you waiting for?
Maybe.
I just have one question for Manager Parker. Last week was the N1D component of the investigation. Can you tell us what the next steps of the investigation are, please?
Yes, is it okay for me to respond?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I didn't even hear what he said.
So Mr. Pattinson had asked me about the next step related to the N1 discovery administrative review. What I was thinking is maybe I should kind of go over the motion that was made and then provide some insight as far as where we're at right now, if that works for everyone. Okay, and I'm not long-winded, so it won't take me long. Okay, so basically, at the November 28th, 2023 meeting, the authorization was for an administrative review, a motion to authorize the manager to conduct an administrative review of the causes of how on November 15th, 2023, the clerk received one email message from the account willhathaway@sciotownship.org, and the planning coordinator received one calendar invite from the account willhathaway@sciotownship.org, without the supervisor having knowledge of having sent these. The administrative review may also include recommendations to the township regarding procedures and policies to prevent such events in the future. To carry out this administrative review, in addition to the internal resources of the IT director and township attorney, the manager is authorized to engage with an outside IT or other professional service as necessary in an amount not to exceed $10,000 to be budgeted from the general fund balance. And last, to ask that the administrative review be reported to the Board of Trustees by no later than January 31st, 2024. So we did not meet the January 31st date primarily because we did not have a consultant to conduct the review. And I made requests to about 3 different firms before we got to N1 Discovery. Okay. As far as the next step, just based on the direction in the motion, the N1 Discovery report provided recommendations related to changes that should take place with our Zoom platform, the procedures. And I've been working with Chris Bailey, and he has moved forward with those changes with the Zoom. In addition to that, there was a request made that the report be provided, I think initially to the Sheriff's Department. However, based on current information, our township attorney planned to provide the report to the prosecutor's office. And so that's underway.
Has it been sent yet?
I don't believe she sent it out at this point in time. And then just in terms of the report itself, I believe our attorney was reviewing the information to determine if there was anything in addition that we need to do. However, you know, based on the forensic review, I don't believe at this point there's a step forward with getting anything in addition from N1 Discovery, but I would defer to our attorney to provide that information to the board. And
Wasn't there talk about preparation of a resolution to summarize this and put it
Yeah.
behind us? So I
Yeah.
think Mariah, we tasked Mariah with drafting this resolution.
no, it wasn't in the motion that was made, so was that a separate discussion?
It was another motion to have,
Okay,
when we decided for N1 Discovery to present to us, there was also in there for the township attorney for next steps and the resolution.
so I would assume she's gonna provide that information to the board.
And Joyce, do you know how much we spent on N1 Discovery?
I don't have the number in front of me, but it was less than the 10,000. It was probably closer to about 5,000. I can get that
5,000.
number for you.
So it's less than Jessica estimated in the motion.
Yes.
but still $5,000 of taxpayer money.
Will there be any interviews with this follow-up of the people involved?
Now, Mr. Pattinson, when we received the report back, I had an opportunity to meet with N1 Discovery related to the question of interviews, because, you know, I, like you, I had that same concern that maybe those that were directly involved should be interviewed. However, based on their assessment, they did not believe it was necessary because their determination was actually doing the forensic tracking with the technology, and they stayed with that assumption throughout the process. But they declined doing the interviews because of that. So I'm thinking, you know, if there was an interest in looking at interviews, we probably would need to do that separate from their report.
And it was, interviews were talked about on the November 28th meeting. It wasn't, somehow it was not put into the motion, but.
Yeah, it was not included, but even with it not being included, we did make the request to them, thinking that there was some value in doing that. However, they declined. And one of their other comments was that they were doing an administrative review. It was forensic in nature. It was not an investigation. So that was the response I received.
So when is the township going to do an investigation?
I think that's part of what Mariah probably will address in her comments.
Sounds like we have to talk to Mariah.
Are there further comments public comments, excuse me?
Is Rob finished with what because we kind of interrupted him. Sorry, Mr. Pattinson.
Well, he said he had a question, and I think we addressed it and a follow-up question.
Rob, I can unmute you. You're being invited to unmute. If there's anything further you'd like to say?
I'm all set. Thank you very much.
Are there any other hands raised?
Thank you, Rob. There, I don't see any other hands. Anybody else there wanna like that? Looks like no.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I would move we adjourn.
Moved by Riser, support by Noel. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed?
9:42.
Yes, we are adjourned. Wow, that could be a new record.
Well, we all had the 2 items.
Yeah, this is what happens when we have a work session separate from our regular board meeting.